The 12 tables. When fairness first got written down, have you ever played a game where only one person knows all the rules, and they can change them whenever they want, right in the middle of playing? It feels pretty unfair, doesn't it? You might even feel a little scared, because you never know what you're allowed to do, or what might get you in trouble. Well, for a long time in ancient Rome, that's kind of how life was. The judges and powerful people, called patricians, knew all the laws. They were passed down by word of mouth, secret traditions. But the regular people, the plebeians, often had no idea what the laws truly were. Imagine trying to live your life, trying to be good, but not really knowing what the rules were for property, or family, or even how to deal with a debt. If you ended up in court, you were at a huge disadvantage. This wasn't fair, and it left so many feeling helpless and unheard. So, the people spoke up. They demanded that the laws be written down for everyone to see. And that's what happened with the 12 tables. Around 450 BCE, these laws were carved onto 12 bronze tablets and put on display in the Roman Forum, the city's main public space. It was a huge moment. For the first time, the rules of Roman society were clear, visible, and accessible to everyone, not just the powerful few. This wasn't just about knowing the rules, it was about having a voice, a chance to understand and defend yourself. It brought a quiet kind of peace, a feeling of security, knowing what to expect. It was a promise that justice wouldn't be hidden away in shadows anymore, whispered by a few. And this idea, that laws should be written down and public for all, is a cornerstone of modern justice, echoing to our world today. It reminds us that true fairness starts when everyone knows the game. It makes you feel safer, knowing the boundaries are there for all to see, protecting everyone equally, and giving everyone a chance to understand. You're innocent until proven guilty, a Roman idea. Have you ever felt accused of something, even when you knew deep down you hadn't done it? That familiar knot in your stomach, wishing someone would just listen to your side first. It's a feeling no one likes. There's this powerful idea at the very heart of how justice works in many places today. You are innocent until someone proves you are guilty. It means no one can simply decide you're wrong without showing real facts, solid evidence. Your reputation isn't just taken away. It has to be respectfully challenged with proof. But here's the thing. This core belief in fairness, this protective shield for anyone facing an accusation, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. A lot of it comes from the ancient Romans. Before them, in many places, it was often the opposite. People were sometimes treated as if they were guilty right away, and it was incredibly hard for them to prove otherwise. Imagine living in a time like that, where your good name could be lost so easily. Think about it like this. If you're trying to figure out why a plant isn't growing well, you don't just guess. You check the soil, the light, the water. You look for evidence, right? You don't just assume the plant is bad. It's the same with a person's guilt. We shouldn't just assume someone has done something wrong without carefully checking all the facts, without building a case with solid proof. We need to be like careful scientists, observing and testing, not quick guessers. This Roman gift is more than just a rule for courts. It's a quiet promise that your worth isn't decided by an accusation. It's a deep call for patience, a plea for understanding before judgment. It reminds us to see the whole person, not just a label or a rumor. It tells us that truth needs light and clear evidence, not just whispers. And that, in a world that can sometimes feel very fast to judge, is a profound comfort, a deep kind of respect for every single one of us. Promises. Promises. Why Rome made deals official. Have you ever made a promise you really hoped someone would keep? Maybe it was about returning a borrowed game, or helping with a big school project. We all know how important promises are, and how much it hurts when someone breaks one. Imagine that feeling, not just between two friends, but across an entire city, an entire empire. In ancient Rome, a broken promise could unravel entire lives, cause bitter arguments, and even ruin whole businesses. How could a society function? If no one could truly trust another's word, it would be chaos, a world built on shifting sand. Here's the thing. The Romans understood that for their society to work, for people to trade goods, to build grand structures, to simply live together peacefully, promises had to be more than just whispers in the wind. They had to be solid, dependable, something people could truly count on. So, they made deals official. They created systems where agreements weren't just based on a handshake or a spoken vow, but on a formal, legal bond. This wasn't about being mean or overly strict. It was about building certainty, creating a fair and predictable environment. Everyone knew exactly where they stood and what to expect from others. Think about a major league sports contract. A player promises to play, and the team promises to pay. It's not just a friendly agreement, it's a signed, official document. If either side breaks that promise, there are consequences. This makes sure everyone takes their promises seriously. For Rome, this idea scaled up to everything from selling land to making marriage agreements. It allowed people to plan their futures, knowing that certain things were guaranteed. So, here's what it comes down to. The laws that made Roman promises official weren't just about cold rules on paper. They were about something much deeper: trust. They were about the quiet strength that comes when people can truly rely on each other, when their word holds real power. And that's a powerful idea, one that still whispers through our modern world, reminding us of the hidden connections that hold us all together. What's yours is yours. Rome's rules on owning stuff. Have you ever felt that quiet, certain feeling when something is truly, deeply yours? Maybe it's a worn-out book filled with your notes, or a painting you spent hours creating, or even just your spot on the couch after a long day. That sense of belonging, of having something that no one else can just take away, is powerful. The ancient Romans understood this feeling more than we often realize. They saw that a society where people felt secure in what they owned was a society that could grow, thrive, and stay peaceful. Here's the thing: Rome didn't just stumble upon these ideas. They spent centuries figuring out how property should work. Who gets to claim a field? What happens if your cow wanders onto someone else's land? These weren't just small questions. They were huge. The answers built the very foundation of their daily lives. If you knew your farm, your tools, your home belonged to you, you could plant seeds, build fences, and invest your hard work without fear. It gave people a reason to strive, to build, to dream. Think about it like this. Imagine you're building a massive, intricate Lego castle. You spent days carefully placing each brick, following your own vision. How would you feel if someone could just walk over and claim it, or knock it down without consequence? The frustration, the deep sense of unfairness. That's exactly what Roman laws of ownership sought to prevent. They protected the sweat and effort you poured into making something yours. So, it wasn't just about stuff. Not really. It was about trust. It was about knowing that the effort you put in, the life you built, was yours to keep, yours to pass on. And that quiet security, born from ancient laws, still echoes in how we understand our world today. It reminds us that protection for what we hold dear isn't just a rule, but a deeply human need. Leaving things behind. How Rome handled wills. Have you ever stopped to think about what you might leave behind when you're no longer here? Not just your favorite hoodie or old video games, but the real stuff: your hopes, your memories, the things you truly cared about. For the ancient Romans, this wasn't just a quiet thought. It was a serious, almost sacred, plan. They created something called a will, and it was much more than a list of possessions. It was a final, powerful message to the future, a way to make sure their story, and the very heart of their family's existence, would continue. Imagine someone spending their entire life building something important, like a respected family name or a thriving farm. A Roman will was their last chance to make sure all that hard work, all those years of effort, wouldn't just disappear. It was a formal, often public document that stated who would inherit property. Yes, but also who would carry on their duties, protect their children, or maintain religious traditions. It wasn't merely about money. It was profoundly about ensuring the family's honor, its place in society, and its unbroken future. They believed deeply that a part of you, your essential legacy, must live on. Think about a family passing down a beloved handwritten recipe for a special meal, generation after generation. It's not just the ingredients, it's the stories shared while making it, the feeling of warmth and comfort it brings. Each time that dish is prepared, a little piece of those who came before is remembered, cherished, and brought to life. A Roman will was like that, but on a grander scale, a legal recipe for how their life's efforts should be honored and distributed. It was a final, profound act of care, reaching out from the silent past to gently guide the hands of the future. It reminded everyone that even after a life ends, the connections, duties, and love we build can, and often do, beautifully endure. We all leave ripples behind in the great ocean of time, and a will was Rome's deeply human way of carefully shaping those ripples, ensuring they spread with purpose. Your day in court. How Rome set up its justice system. Have you ever wondered who decides what's right and wrong when a big disagreement happens, or felt something just wasn't fair? The Romans faced these questions daily. The system they built for their courts still whispers into our lives. Imagine a world without clear rules, without anyone to settle arguments. It would feel like chaos, right? The Romans understood this deeply. So, they created a justice system. It wasn't always perfect, but it aimed for order and fairness. They wanted a place where conflicts could be heard and decisions made based on shared laws, not just who was strongest. Here's the thing. Before Rome, justice often meant the most powerful person got their way. But the Romans believed in something quite new, the rule of law. This meant everyone, from the humblest farmer to the richest leader, had to follow the same rules. It was a huge step. They had judges, and sometimes citizens acted like juries. People even helped others present their case. It was all about having a clear process. Think about playing a video game online. If someone cheats or breaks the rules, there's usually a way to report them, right? Moderators look at the evidence and listen. That's a small example. Rome wanted a clear system for when people felt wronged or accused. So, what does this tell us? Deep down, we long for justice. We want to believe there's a system that cares, that listens, and tries its best to make things right. Rome's efforts, centuries ago, planted a vital seed. That seed grew into the idea that a peaceful society needs a justice system built on fairness and clear rules. It's about finding calm in conflict, knowing there's a place for your voice to be heard. No favoritism. The idea of equal treatment under law. Have you ever felt things weren't fair? Like when a teacher gave one student a pass for a mistake, but not another, or when rules seem to apply only to some people. That feeling, that sting of unfairness, is something humans have known for a very long time. Every society faces this challenge. The ancient Romans began to tackle it. They started to imagine a world where everyone, rich or poor, powerful or not, was judged by the same rules. This was equality under the law. Before then, treatment often depended on who you were. Nobles were treated differently than farmers. Money or connections could bend the rules. But Roman thinkers pushed for laws that applied to everyone. It took centuries, but the idea was planted. A law should be like a steady scale, weighing actions, not people. Think about a team sport. What if the rules changed just for the star player? Or if someone could ignore a penalty because their parent coached? It wouldn't be fair. You wouldn't trust the game. Laws are our shared rules, for our communities to work, for us to feel safe and trust each other. Those rules need to be the same for everyone. This wasn't just about legal documents. It was about deeper respect. It was about recognizing the shared value in each person, no matter their place in society. This is a quiet, powerful message from ancient Rome that still echoes today. True justice looks at what happened, not who did it. It asks us to believe in a world where everyone stands equally before the law, a world we are still building, together. Public roads. How Rome kept its empire moving. Have you ever truly thought about what holds a giant society together? How do people and ideas travel across vast lands? For the ancient Romans, the answer was literally carved into the earth itself. Their amazing network of public roads. These weren't just dirt paths. The Romans built millions of miles of paved roads, so straight and strong, they stretched across Europe, Africa, and Asia. Think of them as the very veins and arteries of their vast empire. They carried everything vital. Soldiers marched swiftly to protect distant borders. Traders brought goods, like food and spices, from far-off lands to busy cities. Messengers raced with important news, making sure leaders knew what was happening, even in the furthest corners. Without these roads, Rome's immense empire would simply have fallen apart. It was too vast to manage any other way. This network wasn't just for moving things from one place to another. It was also about moving ideas. Roman law, Roman culture, and even the Latin language spread along these routes, connecting people who might never have met otherwise. Think about your school. What if there were no hallways? No clear paths to get from your classroom to the library or the cafeteria? Everything would feel separate. The school wouldn't really work as one connected place. That's a lot like what Rome would have been without its roads. They were the essential pathways of their world. It's amazing to think that some of these very roads are still in use today. Thousands of years later, they stand as a quiet reminder. Even simple things, built with such care and purpose, can outlast their creators by centuries. They show us how deeply we need to connect, not just physically, but through shared understanding and purpose. And that connection, like a truly well-built road, can carry us all a very long way across time itself. Citizenship. What it meant to be Roman and why it mattered. Have you ever felt truly part of something? Like you belong, really belong, somewhere important? For people in the Roman Empire, citizenship was exactly that, but on a massive scale. Here's the thing. Being Roman wasn't just about living in Rome or within its vast lands. It was a special status, a powerful identity that changed everything about a person's life. Think of it like this. Roman citizenship was a bit like having a VIP pass to the greatest empire on earth. It wasn't given to everyone easily. For centuries, it was a hard-won privilege, often granted for loyal service, military bravery, or simply being born into the right family. But what did it actually mean? It meant you had rights, big ones. You could vote in elections, own land, make legal contracts, and appeal unfair decisions. You couldn't be tortured, and you were protected by Roman law, even if you were far from the capital. This could help you immensely. Imagine you're on a sports team. When you're part of that team, you get a uniform. You have coaches looking out for you, and you represent something bigger than yourself. You have certain responsibilities, like showing up for practice and playing your best, but you also get the support and protection of the whole team. Roman citizenship was like being on Team Rome. You had duties, sure, like maybe serving in the army or paying taxes, but in return, you received a profound sense of belonging and a shield of protection that no one else had. This feeling of being seen and protected by an entire empire connected you to millions of others. It was a powerful bond, creating a shared identity and a common purpose. It spoke to a deep human need, to matter, to be safe, and to have a voice in the world. It was more than just a piece of paper. It was a heartbeat, connecting you to a living, breathing legacy. Family matters, rules for marriage and divorce. In ancient Rome, have you ever thought about how families start, or how they sometimes end? It's a pretty big deal, right? In ancient Rome, just like today, family was everything. But their rules for marriage and divorce were a little different, and in some ways really surprisingly modern. For Romans, marriage wasn't always about a grand love story, at least not in the beginning. Often, it was more like a partnership, a way for two families to join forces, for status, or to make sure their family name lived on. Imagine your parents deciding who you'd team up with for a big school project, not just based on who you like, but who would bring the best skills to the group, and whose family has a good reputation. That's a bit like it, but for life. It sounds very practical, maybe even a little cold, but it built the very fabric of their society. Children were important, of course, because they carried on the family line and traditions. Here's the thing about marriage in Rome. It was less of a big religious ceremony and more of a private agreement. It was serious, yes, but easier to enter and, surprisingly, easier to leave. If a couple simply agreed they didn't want to be married anymore, or if one person decided to end it, they could. This wasn't just a legal rule. It reflected a deep understanding of human feelings. If two people couldn't live together peacefully or build a good life, why force it? Think of it like this. Your friendships are strong because you choose to be friends. If that connection breaks, it's painful, but sometimes necessary to move on. Roman divorce wasn't always easy, and it often carried social weight, especially for women. But the option was there. This might seem harsh, but it also acknowledged a painful truth. Relationships can change. The laws, in a way, tried to manage that pain, to offer a path forward when hearts and minds drifted apart. It reminds us that even thousands of years ago, people grappled with the same challenges of connection and disconnection, trying to create laws that somehow held society together while respecting individual lives. It's a quiet reflection on how complex human hearts have always been. Who's in charge? How Roman laws define power. Have you ever wondered who truly holds the power? Who gets to decide what's right, what's fair, or even what's possible? Imagine a world where no one really knew. Roman laws faced this big question head. They weren't just a list of rules for citizens. More deeply, they were like a blueprint for power itself, carefully drawing lines around who could do what, and why. This was about more than just managing a city. It was about building a society that could actually last. Back then, the Romans understood something profound. Power without limits can be scary. So, their laws created specific jobs, like magistrates or senators, Each job came with clear responsibilities, but also with boundaries. It was like giving someone a special tool, but also giving them a manual that said exactly what that tool could and could not do. Even mighty emperors, in time, were expected to follow these legal frameworks. It meant that authority wasn't just about a strong person deciding whatever they wanted. It was about an office, a role, defined by shared rules that everyone could understand. Think about a school principal. They have a lot of power, right? They can make big decisions. But even a principal's power isn't endless. It's shaped by school district rules, state laws, and even parent expectations. There are specific things they can do, and things they can't. That structure, that clear definition of their power, helps everyone feel safe and understand how things work. It prevents chaos. The Roman way of defining power through law brought a quiet strength to their world. It gave people a sense of predictability, a feeling that things wouldn't just change on a whim. It told them that even if someone was powerful, they still operated within a system. This idea, that power must be understood, limited, and directed by law, is a gift from the past. It's what helps us believe in justice and a stable future, even today. It reminds us that true power often comes with profound responsibility, shaped by the rules we all agree to live by. Stealing is stealing. Rome's laws against theft. Have you ever lost something important, or had it taken from you? That sinking feeling in your stomach, the anger, the unfairness of it all. It's a feeling humans have known for thousands of years, even in ancient Rome. Because here's the thing, stealing has always been stealing. No matter the time or place, the Romans knew this deep in their bones. They understood that for a city to work, for people to live together without constant fear, there had to be rules about property. Early Roman laws, like the famous 12 tables, weren't just about big crimes. They also spelled out clear consequences for theft. If someone took your oxen or a valuable tool, it wasn't just a minor issue. It could mean serious trouble for the thief. And that's why it matters. These laws tried to keep order, to protect what people worked hard for. They made it clear that taking what wasn't yours would not be tolerated. Think about a beehive. Each bee works hard, collecting nectar for the honey that belongs to the whole colony. If another creature, like a bear, comes along and just takes the honey without contributing, it disrupts everything. The colony's survival is threatened. It's the same with the human community. When someone steals, it's not just taking an object. It breaks trust. It makes everyone feel less safe, like the hive is under attack. The Romans saw this, how theft damages the very fabric of society, making people guarded and suspicious. So, the laws against stealing weren't just about punishment. They were about building a foundation for trust and fairness. They reminded everyone that respecting each other's belongings is a basic part of being human, a quiet promise we make to each other. Even today, that simple idea, born so long ago, still echoes in our hearts and our rules, reminding us that fairness is a feeling we all need. Fighting fair, the rules of war, Roman style. Have you ever been in an argument where things felt totally unfair, like someone broke the unwritten rules, and suddenly the whole point just vanished? The ancient Romans, surprisingly, thought a lot about fairness, even when it came to war. Here's the thing, they didn't just rush into battle. They had a system for what they called a just war. This wasn't about being soft. It was a deep, emotional belief. Even brutal conflicts, they felt, needed a clear reason, a right and wrong. Fighting without a just cause, for them, was a betrayal of their own values. Imagine an intense sports game. You want to win, right? But there are still rules. No tripping, no cheating. If someone breaks them badly, the game feels wrong. The victory, if it comes, doesn't feel earned. For the Romans, declaring war was like the most serious game, needing clear steps to be legitimate. They had special priests, called fatiles, who would go to an enemy's land. They demanded justice for wrongs. Only after these careful, formal steps, if justice wasn't given, would war be declared. This wasn't just ceremony. It was a way to tell themselves, and the world, they had tried every other peaceful option. They felt it mattered deeply to fight for a cause they truly saw as fair and necessary. This ancient idea still echoes today. Think about arguments with a friend. You get upset, but you still follow unwritten rules. You try to understand, not just yell. You want to resolve things, not just destroy the connection. That search for fairness, for order even in chaos, is a basic part of being human. The Romans, With all their power, knew simply fighting wasn't enough. There had to be a path, a reason, something that made the conflict feel earned and dignified. It shows us how deeply we crave justice and purpose, even when things are incredibly difficult. This ancient Roman idea whispers to us about integrity, even in our toughest moments. The idea of a jury. Did Rome have one? Have you ever wondered about fairness, about how we decide what's right when someone is accused? Today, we think of a jury, a group of ordinary people who hear facts and decide if someone is guilty. It feels like a cornerstone of justice. But here's the thing. Did the Roman Empire, which gave us so many laws, have anything like our modern jury? It's a really interesting question. The Romans didn't have juries exactly like ours, with 12 strangers sworn to secrecy, but they had something similar, sharing the same deep human need for balanced judgment. In Rome, especially during the Republic, citizens were often involved in trials. Sometimes, large groups of citizens would vote on a person's fate. Other times, a praetor, who was like a judge, would pick a private citizen called a This iudex was a regular person, not a professional, chosen for just that specific case, to hear evidence and make a decision. Think about your class deciding on a new project. Instead of just your teacher picking, what if a few students were chosen to hear ideas from everyone and then decide which one was best? It's not a jury, but it's about involving more people, bringing in different views, instead of just one person holding all the power. That core idea that important decisions shouldn't rest only on one person's shoulders, that was present in Rome. It makes you stop and think, doesn't it? This ancient way of doing things, even without our modern jury boxes, shows a profound belief. It shows that even thousands of years ago, people knew that deciding someone's freedom, their future, needed more than just one mind. It needed the careful thought, the shared humanity of many, and that's why it matters today. It's a quiet whisper from the past, reminding us of justice's heavy weight, and the shared responsibility we carry for each other. Protecting your property. How Rome guarded what you owned. Have you ever had something important taken from you? Maybe a favorite game console, a bike, or even just a drawing you worked really hard on. Remember that sinking feeling, the unfairness of it all. That ache of loss is something humans have felt forever, and ancient Romans felt it deeply too. They understood that having things, truly owning them, gives us a sense of safety and control in our lives. So Rome put huge effort into protecting what belonged to people. They had laws that clearly said, this is yours, and no one else can just take it. It wasn't just about big pieces of land or fancy jewels. It was about everything, big and small. These rules, some of the very first written down in their famous 12 tables, were like a strong fence around what you owned. They made it clear that if someone messed with your stuff, there would be consequences. Imagine you've spent hours building an amazing world in a video game, carefully collecting items, shaping your base. It's your creation, full of your effort and time. If someone could just log in and delete it all, how would you feel? Devastated, right? You'd want justice. Rome's laws were like a promise that your hard work, your possessions, whether a farm, a tool, or even a cherished pet, were safe. They gave people a solid ground to stand on. This idea that your personal property is sacred and protected by law traveled through history. It gave people peace of mind, allowing them to build, to create, and to live without constant fear that everything could be snatched away. It helped societies grow because people knew their efforts would not be in vain. It's a quiet comfort we often take for granted today, knowing that our belongings are generally safe, all thanks to those ancient foundations. It's a legacy that still whispers, this is yours. Adopting children, Rome's way of growing families. What truly makes a family? Is it always about blood, about being born into a certain name? The ancient Romans had a deep understanding that family could grow in other powerful ways. For them, adopting children wasn't just a kind gesture. It was a cornerstone of their world, a practical, deeply emotional act. Imagine a family with no sons to carry on their legacy. This was a serious concern in Rome. Their family name, history, and property could all disappear. So, here's how it worked. A Roman family, often a wealthy one, could adopt an adult or a child, bringing them fully into their household. This new member wasn't just a guest. They became a true son or daughter, taking on the family name and all its responsibilities. It was a profound change. Think of it like building a strong bridge. When a part of the bridge is weak or missing, you don't just let it fall. You find a new, strong piece and fit it in. That new piece might not have been there from the start, but once it's in place, it becomes an essential part, making the bridge stronger and ensuring it carries on. In the same way, adoption in Rome strengthened families, ensuring their future and their place in society. It was about continuity, about ensuring the family's story kept being told. This practice tells us something important today. It reminds us that family isn't just about where you came from, but also about where you are going and who you are with. It's about love that chooses, connections that are forged, and the incredible human desire to belong and to leave something good behind. It's a quiet truth. Family is built by hearts, not just by birth. Stopping crime. How Rome tried to keep the peace. Have you ever stopped to think about what it really means to feel safe? To walk down a street or sit in your home and not have to worry about someone taking what's yours or hurting you. For the ancient Romans, this feeling of security was everything. They understood that if people couldn't trust their neighbors, or if chaos seemed to always be around the corner, their great empire couldn't stand. So, here's the thing. Rome didn't just build roads and grand temples. They also built a huge, complex system of laws aimed at stopping crime and keeping the peace. It wasn't just about catching someone after they did something wrong. It was about creating a world where people felt protected enough to work, to trade, to raise their families. Imagine a machine with many gears. If even one gear breaks, the whole machine might slow down, or worse, grind to a halt. Crime was like that broken gear. Every theft, every fight, every act of violence felt like a threat to the stability they worked so hard to achieve. Think about how your school works. There are rules, right? Rules about being respectful, about not taking things from others, about solving problems without fighting. These rules aren't there just to punish you. They are there so everyone can learn, feel safe, and be treated fairly. If those rules vanished, the whole school would feel different, confusing, maybe even a little scary. Rome faced this on a massive scale, across an entire civilization. They knew a world without fairness, a world without consequences, was a frightening place. This wasn't just about harsh punishments. It was about hope. Hope that justice could exist, that order could win over chaos, and the search for that balance, that enduring desire for a society where everyone can live without fear. That is a journey we are still on, even today. Your word is your bond. The importance of contracts. What does it truly mean to give your word, to promise something? It's more than just words spoken. It carries real weight. It means there's an expectation, a trust that you will do what you said. For ancient Romans, this idea was at the very heart of their society. They called it fides. This was more than just trust. It was about faith, loyalty, and honor in keeping commitments. When a Roman made an agreement, whether buying land or making a trade, it wasn't just a business deal. It reflected on their character, their family's name, and their standing in the community. Their word truly was their bond. Think about it like this. Imagine you and your classmates are working on a big science project. Everyone has a specific part they need to research and present. You agreed to do your section, and your friend agrees to do theirs. If one person suddenly decides not to do their part, what happens? The whole project suffers. The trust breaks down. People get frustrated. It's not just about the grade. It's about the feeling of letting others down and being let down yourself. That agreement, that unspoken contract within your group, is crucial. It creates order and allows everyone to count on each other. The Roman legal system understood this need for reliability. Their laws made sure these agreements, these contracts, were respected. It meant that people could plan, build, and trade without constant fear of being cheated. It meant you could count on the person you were dealing with, and that's why it matters still today. When you honor your word, you don't just complete a task, you build bridges of trust. You show respect not only for the other person, but for yourself. Our agreements, big or small, are the quiet threads that weave us together, creating a world where we can rely on each other. It's a powerful, quiet force. This simple act of keeping your word. Building cities, laws for public spaces and buildings. Have you ever walked into a bustling city square or a quiet neighborhood park and just felt good, like everything was designed to make life easier or more beautiful? It's a feeling that dates back thousands of years. To the Romans who understood something profound, the way we build our shared spaces profoundly shapes our lives. They weren't just building structures, they were crafting communities. Imagine living in a city with no rules for how wide streets should be, or where fountains could stand. Imagine houses built so close they blocked all the sunlight, or garbage tossed anywhere. That's a recipe for chaos, not a home. So, the Romans put laws in place. They decided how much space had to be left between buildings to prevent fires from spreading. They made sure public fountains were accessible to everyone, not just a few. They even had rules about keeping streets clean and how high buildings could reach, so light and air could still flow through the city. This wasn't just about making things neat. It was about respect. Respect for your neighbor, for the common good, and for the very idea of a shared life. It's like playing a massive online game where everyone builds their own house. If there are no rules for roads or shared resources, it quickly turns into a jumbled mess. But with clear guidelines, suddenly a functional, beautiful world emerges where players can connect and thrive. The Romans knew that for a city to truly feel like a home for everyone, it needed clear boundaries and shared expectations. These ancient laws whisper a truth to us today, that the places we inhabit are more than just brick and mortar. They are reflections of our values, our hopes, and our commitment to each other. When we care for our public spaces, when we design them with thought and purpose, we are not just building cities. We are building a foundation for human connection, for safety, and for a life where everyone can find their place in the sun. Money and debt. How Rome dealt with borrowing and owing. Have you ever truly thought about what it means to owe someone? Not just a few dollars for a treat, but a promise so big it could shape your whole future. In ancient Rome, borrowing and owing carried a profound weight, a personal stake we can barely understand. It wasn't just numbers. It was about your honor, your very freedom, and your family's survival. Imagine standing at the edge of a deep canyon. One wrong step, and everything could be lost. That's how many Romans felt about debt. When you borrowed, you made a serious, binding promise. It was like shaking hands on a deal that could decide your life. If you couldn't pay it back, the consequences were very harsh. People could lose their homes, their land, even be forced into slavery to pay their debts. This was a constant shadow, a deep fear that haunted many lives. A promise, once made, had to be kept, no matter the cost. Think about a delicate ecosystem, like a vibrant coral reef. Every tiny creature is connected. If one part struggles, the whole system can begin to unravel. That's a bit like how debt worked in Rome. When one person couldn't keep their promise, it didn't just affect them. It rippled outwards, impacting families, neighbors, and the city's sense of trust. A broken promise wasn't just a personal failure. It was a crack in the foundation of their society. The core idea was simple. If words meant nothing, how could their civilization stand? So, the laws about money and debt weren't just dry rules. They were about the fabric of human connection and trust. They teach us a powerful lesson. Every promise, big or small, carries deep importance. Even today, the way we borrow, the way we lend, and the way we keep our word, shapes our lives and the world. It reminds us of the quiet, profound strength found in trust, and the heavy, often unseen, burden of a promise broken. The power of a parent. What Roman fathers could do have. You ever felt like your parents had a lot of power over your life? Like, truly, a lot. Imagine that feeling, but then multiply it by 1,000. In ancient Rome, a father's power wasn't just a lot. It was almost total. It was a kind of power we can barely imagine today, shaping families, laws, and even how people thought about growing up. Roman fathers held incredible control over their household. This wasn't just about telling you to clean your room. We're talking about the power to make almost every major decision for their children, no matter their age. A Roman son, even if he was a grown man, a soldier, or a senator, was still legally under his father's authority. This meant his father could decide who he married, what job he took, or whether he owned property. It was like living in a family where one person held all the keys to everyone else's future, from birth until that father died. This system grew from a need for order and stability in a tough world. Roman society believed the family was the basic building block. The father was its foundation. His absolute power aimed to keep the family strong, united, and honorable. It ensured the family name survived and thrived, even if individual dreams sometimes had to wait or be put aside. Think of an old, deeply rooted tree. The trunk is the father. Its branches, no matter how far they reach, are still connected and fed by that main trunk. If the trunk falls, everything changes. Imagine trying to build a giant Lego castle. You have all the bricks, but only one person decides where every single brick goes, for your whole life. And you can't really argue. That's a bit like what it was. It wasn't about being mean, usually. It was about deep, heavy responsibility and a kind of control that feels strange to us. Your identity and path were largely set by someone else's will. There was security, maybe, but also a profound lack of personal freedom that we often take for granted today. So, what does this tell us? It makes us think about what freedom truly means. It shows us how precious our own choices are. It reminds us that growing up and becoming your own person has changed so much. Back then, it meant taking your place within the family. It wasn't about breaking away. It makes you realize how lucky we are to decide so much for ourselves. Lawyers in Rome, speaking up for justice. Have you ever felt like you had something really important to say, but the words just wouldn't come out right? Or maybe you needed someone, anyone, to stand up for you, to speak when your own voice felt too small. This feeling isn't new. Even in ancient Rome, a place that gave us so many rules and laws, people needed champions. These champions were often called orators or advocates, what we might call lawyers today. Rome was built on complex laws, like a giant, intricate puzzle. And here's the thing, not everyone understood that puzzle. If you were poor, or new to the city, or just not good at arguing, the justice system could feel incredibly daunting, unfair even. So, these advocates stepped forward. They didn't just know the laws. They knew how to tell a story, how to paint a picture with words, making sure the judges and the people understood what happened, and why it mattered. They were the bridge between the silent and the heard. Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to explain a really complicated game to your friends. You know all the rules, but putting them into simple words so everyone gets it, that's hard. Now imagine someone steps in, not just explaining the rules, but showing why the game is fun, why your friend deserves to play, and why what happened wasn't fair. They are the voice, making the complex clear, giving meaning to silence. That's the kind of vital role these Roman speakers filled, bringing clarity and courage to courtrooms that often felt cold and intimidating. So here's what happened. This wasn't just about winning a case, it was about something deeper. It was about the human need to be heard, to have your story told, to feel that someone cares enough to fight for your place in the world. It's a quiet whisper across time, reminding us that justice, at its heart, is about seeing and valuing every single person, giving them a voice, even when they can't find their own. Getting paid. How Roman laws protected workers. Sometimes have you ever done a chore, expecting to be paid, only to be left waiting? That unfair feeling, being owed something that doesn't come, it's as old as time itself. Even in ancient Rome, getting paid for your work was a huge deal. It brought both security and deep worry. Imagine being a Roman artisan, perhaps a potter or a builder. You spent weeks crafting beautiful vases or laying strong bricks for a wealthy person's house. You poured your skill and effort into that work. When payment was due, Roman law had ideas. Agreements, like contracts today, sometimes written, sometimes just spoken, were common. The law tried to ensure these promises were kept. It aimed for basic trust. Do your part, get what you earned. This was a step toward a fairer society, showing that people's work had real value. But here's the truth. Life wasn't always kind. If you were powerful, getting your money was easier. What if you were poor, or even enslaved? The laws, despite good intentions, often favored those with more influence. It's like a group project. If the boss doesn't pay the worker, that worker might struggle for justice. The system tried, but it didn't always protect everyone equally. For many, a promised payment could become a crushing debt, a heavy burden stealing their peace. So Rome tried to set rules for fair payment, but the reality was often complex. It reminds us that laws are just words until people decide how to live by them. The idea of fairness, then and now, remains precious and fragile. Buying and selling rules for the Roman marketplace. Have you ever picked up something you wanted, feeling that hope it would be exactly as promised? Or traded with a friend, expecting fairness? Imagine a world where every transaction was clouded by doubt, where trust felt distant. That's a scary thought. The ancient Romans understood this. They knew their civilization needed people to believe in the honesty of the busy marketplace. Here's the thing, they didn't just wish for fairness, they carved it into law. These Roman laws for buying and selling, called emptio venditio, weren't just dry rules. They were the fabric of trust, protecting both buyer and seller. Imagine a farmer selling his harvest. If a seller knowingly hid a serious flaw in an item like a sick animal, sold as healthy, the law stepped in. This wasn't just about getting your money back, it was about the broken promise, the betrayal of an unspoken agreement, that what you presented was honest and true. Think about playing a game with friends. If someone constantly cheats, the fun disappears. The game falls apart. Everyone feels let down. The Roman marketplace was like a giant game of commerce. Without clear rules for honesty, it too would crumble. They saw trade not just as exchange, but as a delicate web of human connections. Each thread needed integrity. These laws made sure no one could sell a rickety wagon and simply disappear, leaving you stranded. They built a foundation of genuine belief. So, looking back at these Roman laws, we realize something powerful. They weren't only about fixing problems or punishing wrongdoers. More deeply, they created a space where humans felt secure enough to engage, to build economies, and to grow together. It shows us how deeply we yearn for fairness, and how essential trust is, connecting hearts across thousands of years in every exchange we make. The law of the land. How Roman ideas spread. Have you ever thought how a powerful idea travels vast distances and lasts for thousands of years? How can something ancient still quietly shape our world today? Rome was known for its mighty armies, but its laws proved even more enduring. As the Roman Empire grew, conquering new lands, it brought more than just soldiers. It carried its unique system of justice. These weren't just strict rules, they were deeply thought out ideas about fairness, property, and what it meant to be a citizen. Imagine a stone dropped in a pond. The ripples spread far. Roman law was like that. Governors, traders, and ordinary people carried these legal ideas across the empire. People in distant lands began to see the order in Roman law. Many laws felt universal. They spoke to basic human needs, how to treat others fairly, how to honor agreements. This wasn't just about power. It was a shared human search for a fair way to live. Think of a popular song that becomes a global hit. Its melody reaches millions. Roman law spread similarly. Its principles made sense, helping people build organized societies wherever Rome's influence touched. Long after the Roman Empire faded, something vital remained, the quiet echo of its laws. These ideas didn't need soldiers. They lived on, forming the foundation for the legal systems of many modern nations. Some truths are so strong, they outlast empires, flowing through history like an ancient, powerful river into our present. Punishing criminals. What happened after you broke a Roman law? Have you ever thought about what happens when rules are broken? Not just a small classroom rule, but something that truly upsets the balance of a community. In ancient Rome, breaking a law wasn't just a mistake. It was seen as a tear in the very fabric of their society. It challenged the order they worked so hard to build. The consequences were often harsh, meant to make everyone think twice before stepping out of line. For Romans, law was about creating a stable world. If someone stole or hurt another, it wasn't just about the person wronged. It was about showing everyone that such acts would not be tolerated. They believed strict punishments were needed to keep their vast empire from falling into chaos. It was a way to keep control and to try and make things right again, or at least prevent more harm. The idea was to restore faith in their system, even if that restoration sometimes felt incredibly brutal to us today. Think about a team sport. If one player constantly breaks the rules, maybe tripping opponents on purpose, or cheating, it doesn't just affect the player they fouled. It affects the whole team's morale, the game's fairness, and the trust everyone has in the rules. That player might get a penalty, or even be removed from the game. In Rome, the game was life itself, and the penalties could be severe. Fines, public humiliation, losing your freedom, or even your life. It was a clear message that their society needed to function smoothly, and rule breakers created massive problems. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do we decide what's fair when someone does something wrong? What's the real purpose of punishment? Is it to scare people, to correct them, or to keep everyone safe? The Romans chose a path of stark consequences, driven by their need for order in a big, complex world. Their methods might seem extreme to us now, but they remind us that every society, then and now, grapples with this deep question. How do we mend what's broken and protect the peace we hold dear? Appeals court. When you didn't like a judge's decision, have you ever felt a deep sense of injustice? Like a decision was just wrong. Maybe a call was made in a game that felt truly unfair, or a teacher's judgment didn't quite make sense for everyone involved. That feeling, that heavy weight of knowing something isn't right, it's a very human experience. a quiet ache for fairness. Now imagine that feeling not over a game, but over something that could change a person's entire life in a court of law. After a judge has made a ruling, the ancient Romans, with all their wisdom, understood this profound need. They knew that even the most respected judges, despite their best efforts, could make mistakes or interpret laws in ways that felt unfair to others. And so, they laid the foundation for a powerful concept that still guides us today: the right to appeal. Think of an appeals court not as a chance to totally redo a trial, but as a second, very careful look. It's like when you ask an adult to review a complex math problem your friend solved, not to accuse your friend of being wrong, but to ensure every step was followed precisely. Here's how it works. Simply put, an appeals court doesn't typically listen to new witnesses or introduce new evidence. Instead, it reviews the written record of the first trial, every word spoken, every piece of evidence presented. They are checking for errors in how the law was applied, or if the process itself wasn't fair. It's like rereading a difficult chapter in a book. You're not changing the story, but making sure you understood every sentence and how it connects to the overall meaning. This enduring Roman idea, this humble admission that human judgment is not perfect, echoes through every modern legal system. It is a quiet testament to our shared belief that justice should be meticulously sought, allowing for thoughtful reconsideration. It reminds us that fairness isn't a single, rigid moment, but a journey that sometimes requires a second, compassionate glance. It offers a glimmer of hope, a gentle assurance that if a decision leaves a heart heavy, there might still be a path to find the right way forward. The praetor, Rome's problem solver in chief. Have you ever felt stuck, like the rules around you weren't quite right for the moment? Maybe a game had a strange play, and the written rules just didn't cover it. Rome, a mighty empire, faced this problem all the time. Their ancient laws, while strong, could sometimes feel rigid, like an old oak tree that couldn't bend in a storm. And that's where the praetor came in. Imagine the praetor as Rome's chief problem solver, a kind of wise referee for life itself. They weren't just judges who applied existing laws. No, their role was deeper, more human. As Rome expanded, trade boomed, and people from all corners of the world came together. New disputes arose that the old, strict Roman laws, made for a smaller, simpler society, simply couldn't handle fairly. A farmer suing a merchant from Egypt over a new kind of grain contract. The praetor listened. They possessed a special power, the ability to issue edicts, like public announcements, that could adapt or even create new legal principles to ensure justice. Think of it like a seasoned basketball referee who, seeing a new type of play, can make an on-the-spot ruling that isn't exactly in the rulebook but makes the game fair for everyone. This wasn't about breaking the law, but about bending it, shaping it, so it could serve people better in a changing world. They looked at the spirit of the law, not just the exact words. This wasn't an easy job. It demanded wisdom, empathy, and a deep understanding of what was truly fair. The praetor stood between rigid tradition and the messy reality of human life, trying to prevent unnecessary hardship. Their very existence reminds us that sometimes, true justice isn't about just blindly following every single letter of the law, but about having someone with the heart and mind to make things right when the old paths fail. It's about ensuring that even as the world changes, the quiet promise of fairness can still find its way. Protecting the weak, laws for orphans and widows. Have you ever felt totally alone, like nobody was looking out for you, losing something important, feeling confused or vulnerable? That unprotected feeling is deep. Romans understood it. Imagine a time without our modern safety nets. If a child lost their parents, or a woman lost her husband, their lives could shatter. Often, no one could provide or speak for them in a harsh world. Roman society, despite its power, faced this truth. They knew a strong society cares for its most vulnerable. So, Romans made laws to shield orphans and widows. These weren't just charity. They were about justice and stability. The laws ensured individuals had guardians. Guardians managed property, protected inheritance, and spoke for them. It was their way of saying, the community still cares, even if your protector is gone. Think about a school's anti-bullying policy. Those rules protect students picked on, those feeling smaller or new. The law steps in, like a principal, to ensure everyone has a fair chance and isn't left defenseless. It builds a safety net for when you can't protect yourself. These laws show us something deeply human about the Romans. They remind us that thousands of years ago, people asked the same questions. How do we build a society where everyone, even the most fragile, can thrive? It's a quiet testament to empathy, a whisper from the past. It tells us looking after each other is fundamental to any lasting civilization. It makes you wonder about the wisdom we still gain from them. Your reputation matters. Laws against slander. Have you ever heard a rumor about someone? Something untrue that changed how you thought of them? Or maybe a lie was told about you, and that feeling of injustice just burned inside. Here's the thing. Our words have a lot of power, more than we often realize. And the ancient Romans understood this very deeply. They knew that a person's good name, their reputation, was incredibly important, sometimes even more precious than their physical belongings. Slander, simply put, is when someone tells a lie about another person, a hurtful untruth that causes harm to their good standing in the community. It wasn't about just disagreeing or having a different opinion. It was about spreading lies on purpose to hurt how people trusted someone, or to ruin their honor, their ability to live a normal life. The Romans saw this not just as a small insult, but as a real injury. If people believed lies about you, your business could fail, your friendships could crumble, and your future could be dimmed. Think of it like a tiny crack in a strong, clear window. When a lie is first spoken, it might seem small, almost unnoticeable. But over time, that tiny crack can spread. It can spiderweb across the entire pane, distorting the view through it, making everything look different and less clear. Even if you try to fix it, even if the truth eventually comes out, that window, that reputation, is never quite the same. The damage lingers, just like those lines across the glass. So, this idea that words can wound as deeply as a sword teaches us something important. It shows us the heavy responsibility that comes with speaking. We hold such power in our mouths, the power to build someone up or to tear them down. The Romans, in their wisdom, tried to put laws in place to protect this fragile, vital part of us, our good name. It reminds us to be careful, to be truthful, and to remember that every word we choose to share can leave a mark, for better or for worse, on the world and on each other. Clean streets, Rome's rules for public health. Have you ever stopped to truly think about why we care if our streets are clean? It seems like such a simple, everyday thing, yet it holds a deep truth about how we live together. Thousands of years ago, in the Roman Empire, a place of grand structures and powerful ideas, they understood this truth profoundly. They didn't have microscopes to see invisible germs, but through careful observation, they saw that dirty streets brought sickness, that stagnant water attracted disease, and that a city filled with neglect made everyone feel worse, in body and spirit. Here's the thing. They learned, sometimes through harsh lessons, that the health of one person was deeply connected to the health of all. So, the Romans didn't just hope for cleanliness. They created laws, clear and firm, about keeping public spaces pure. These weren't suggestions. They were vital rules for survival and a better way of living. Imagine a bustling Roman marketplace, overflowing with voices and goods. If waste piled up, it swiftly became a source of illness, breeding despair at the community's heart. Their laws mandated careful drainage and proper waste disposal, ensuring clean water flowed. It's kind of like how, in your school, if one person leaves trash on the classroom floor, it doesn't just make their spot messy. Soon, the whole room feels untidy, quietly affecting everyone's focus and comfort. In Rome, they understood that personal choices had a ripple effect across the entire city, touching every citizen. This wasn't just about making things look tidy. It was about a profound, shared responsibility, a deep care for the community's soul. The Romans felt a sacred duty to protect each other, even from threats they couldn't see. They showed us that a truly healthy city is not just built with strong stones, but with a collective effort, a quiet respect for shared spaces, and a deep unspoken understanding that we are all interconnected. And that's why it truly matters. The simple act of keeping things clean was, for them, an act of profound love for the human family, a silent promise whispered to future generations. The Senates say, how laws were proposed and passed. Have you ever wondered how the rules that guide our lives begin? Not just big laws, but even small ones that shape our daily routines. In ancient Rome, it was often in the grand halls of the Senate where ideas slowly took shape. These became laws that carved paths for millions. Imagine a group of wise, experienced individuals, chosen for their knowledge and status. These were the senators. They were the heart of Roman decision. When someone, like a magistrate or the emperor, felt a new rule was needed, maybe to fix a trade issue, or set a new building standard, or just make things fairer, they would bring their idea, their proposed law, to the Senate. It was like bringing a puzzle piece to a large group. They asked if it fit. If everyone agreed, it should be part of the picture. This wasn't a quick process. Discussions were long and serious. Senators debated, argued, and considered every angle. Think about it like deciding on a new school policy, maybe a rule about phone use. Everyone has an opinion. The goal is to find a solution that helps the whole community. In Rome, they considered not just what was fair now, but what would serve future generations. They knew their decisions would echo through time. Once the Senate approved, usually by a majority vote, the proposed law wasn't finished. It still needed to go before the Roman people, in assemblies, to be voted on. This was a crucial step, letting citizens have a direct voice. It's kind of like when you propose an idea for a group project. Even if your small team agrees, the whole class or teacher still gives the final okay. The idea needs to stand up to a wider test, and so, a law would be born. From a quiet thought, debated in hallowed halls, presented to the people, and finally, etched into stone. It's powerful to think about how the collective voice, careful thought, and hopes of an entire civilization could create something so lasting. These were not just words, they were the very fabric of their society. Threads that, even today, weave into the patterns of our own world. What a weight, what a legacy. Military law, keeping soldiers in line. Have you ever thought about what it takes for a large group of people to work together perfectly, especially when their lives are on the line? Imagine a Roman legion, thousands of soldiers, marching into battle. If one person panicked or refused an order, what would happen? Chaos, right? That's where military law came in. A set of very strict rules designed to keep soldiers in line. Here's the thing. These laws weren't just about punishment. They were about survival, and about building unbreakable trust. Roman military law made sure every soldier understood their duty, their place, and the serious consequences of messing up. If a soldier deserted their post, or didn't follow commands, it wasn't just about them. It could mean the death of their comrades, the failure of a whole mission, and a deep sense of betrayal for those who counted on them. The Romans knew that absolute discipline was the backbone of their mighty army. They fought as one, because their very lives, and the fate of Rome, depended on it. Think of it like a group of firefighters rushing into a burning building. Each person has a specific job, and they have to trust that everyone else will do theirs exactly as planned. There's no room for someone to decide, "Nah, I don't feel like it today." If one firefighter fails to check a hose, or doesn't follow the team leader, people could get hurt, or even die. The stakes are that high. 4 Roman soldiers, facing an enemy, the need for perfect order, for every shield to hold, and every sword to swing in sync, was even greater. These laws, even if they seemed harsh, were born from a deep understanding of human nature and the terrible pressures of war. They weren't just lines on a scroll. They were the framework that allowed men to face fear and stand together. They carved out a path for bravery, responsibility, and the strong bond of brothers in arms. They remind us that sometimes, for the greater good, for the safety of everyone, individuals must put their own wants aside and become part of something bigger, something that stands firm even when the world shakes. It's a heavy thought, but an important one when we consider what it truly means to protect a civilization, and what we owe to each other in times of great challenge. The idea of precedent, learning from past decisions. Have you ever faced a big decision and wished you knew exactly what to do, or looked back and wished you'd done things differently? We all do. But imagine if every time someone needed a court ruling, the judge had to invent an entirely new rule. No guidance, no past examples, just a fresh start every single time. That sounds a bit scary, right? This is where the powerful idea of precedent comes in. It's simple, really. Precedent means looking at how similar problems were solved before. It's about learning from past decisions. The Romans, with their incredible minds, understood this deeply. When their judges made a ruling on a tough case, they knew that decision wasn't just for that one person. It would become a guide for future judges facing similar situations. They built a system where each new legal decision added a brick to a sturdy wall. This made the law stronger, more predictable. It wasn't just about fairness for today. It was about ensuring fairness for generations. Think about it like this. When you learn a new video game, you might watch someone else play first, or you remember a tip from a friend. That friend's past experience, their success, or even their failures, helps you make better choices. It sets a precedent for your own game. Or think about a doctor. They don't invent a new treatment for every patient. Instead, they use what has worked before, what medical science has proven through countless past cases. That's precedent in action, helping them heal. And that's why this idea matters so much. It's a way for human experience to build upon itself. It means our world isn't just random, where everything changes without warning or reason. Instead, it's a place where wisdom can grow, passed down through time. It's a quiet comfort, knowing that what happened yesterday, or even 1,000 years ago, can still gently guide us toward a more thoughtful, more just tomorrow. We don't have to figure everything out all alone. We can learn from the footsteps left behind. What about slaves? Their place in Roman law. When we talk about Roman laws, we often think of citizens, senators, and powerful emperors. But here's the thing, a huge part of Roman society wasn't free at all. They were enslaved people, and their place in the law was incredibly harsh and complicated. Imagine if your life, from the moment you woke up to the moment you went to sleep, was completely controlled by someone else. You couldn't choose where you lived, what work you did, or even who you could love. Your parents might have been enslaved, or you might have been captured in a war. Roman law often treated enslaved people as property, like a tool or an animal, rather than as a person with rights. This might feel shocking to us today, and it should. But in ancient Rome, having enslaved people was just part of life. The laws allowed owners to buy and sell them, to punish them, and to decide almost everything about their existence. They couldn't vote, couldn't own land, and often couldn't even testify in court. It was a life without true agency, without the simple freedom to make your own choices. Think of it like this. Imagine your favorite video game, but someone else holds the controller all the time. They decide when you play, what character you use, which quests you do, and even when the game stops. You're in the game, you're doing things, but you have no real say in your own story. That's a tiny glimpse into the total lack of control an enslaved person faced, but multiplied by real life, real pain, and no reset button. This part of Roman history is a heavy reminder. It shows us how far humanity has come in understanding what it means to be truly free. It pushes us to remember that even in a highly organized and advanced society, the idea of universal human dignity was still a long, painful journey away. Women's rights. How much power did Roman women have? Have you ever wondered about the women in ancient Rome? Did they really have a voice, or were they just in the shadows? Here's the thing, their lives were complicated, a mix of strict rules and surprising strengths. Legally, Roman women weren't treated like men. They couldn't vote, couldn't hold public jobs, and usually lived under the control of a father or husband. It sounds pretty unfair, right? And it was. The law saw them more as needing protection than as fully independent people. This meant their rights were limited in many important ways. But here's where it gets interesting. Even with these tough laws, many Roman women found ways to have real power, especially in their homes and behind the scenes. They were often the heart of the family, managing the household, raising children, and sometimes even handling family money or businesses. Think of it like a big school project. One student might be the leader who presents the work, but another student might be the one who organized every meeting, did most of the research, and made sure everyone stayed on track. That person's impact is huge, even if they don't have the official title. Their quiet work makes all the difference. This hidden power tells us something important. Even when the laws didn't give women equal rights, their spirit and actions still shaped the world around them. Their contributions, often unseen by history books, focused on emperors and battles, were crucial to Roman life. So, while they faced many limits, their story reminds us that power isn't always about who has the loudest voice or the highest title. Sometimes, true strength lies in quiet resilience, the clever ways people find to make their lives count, and the lasting impact they have on those they love. It's a deep thought, really. Taxes, taxes, taxes. How Rome collected money. Have you ever stopped to think about how a huge, powerful empire like Rome actually paid for everything? It wasn't magic. It was, well, taxes. Imagine a society stretching across vast lands, with millions of people, needing armies, roads, baths, and huge temples. All of that costs money. And here's the thing, that money came from everyone. From farmers selling crops to merchants trading goods, a piece of it went to Rome. It felt like an endless flow, a constant hum beneath daily life. This idea of contributing to something bigger than yourself isn't new. It's as old as communities. In Rome, taxes were the bloodstream of the empire. They kept it alive, powered its growth, and made grand projects possible. Without this constant flow, Rome's mighty legions couldn't have marched. Its incredible roads wouldn't have stretched for miles. Its grand cities wouldn't have risen. Think about your own body. Every single cell needs nutrients and energy to do its job. Your brain, your heart, your muscles, they all draw from the same shared supply. If some cells stopped contributing, the whole system would suffer. Rome worked a lot like that. Every person, every province, was like a cell, contributing its bit to the great body of the empire. It wasn't always fair, and sometimes it was a heavy burden, but the collected wealth created a shared world. It allowed people to live in cities, to travel, to trade, to feel part of something grander. Even today, our own contributions, in big and small ways, build the world around us. It's a quiet agreement, a shared understanding. For great things to happen, we all have to play a part, and that's why it matters. It reminds us that even the most powerful structures are built on countless individual efforts, woven together across time. Fair weights and measures, keeping business honest. Imagine walking into a market, eager to buy food for your family. How do you know the merchant isn't tricking you? This feeling, this worry, it's as old as time itself. The Romans understood it deeply. That's why they made laws about fair weights and measures. It meant that when you bought grain, you got a full measure of grain. When you bought fabric, you got the exact length you asked for. It was about making sure everyone was treated honestly. These weren't just simple rules for shopkeepers. They were the very foundations of trust in a society. If you couldn't trust the scales, you couldn't trust anyone. And if you couldn't trust anyone, how could a city, an empire, even stand? This can help you understand that these laws built more than just trade. They built belief. They built a world where people could rely on one another, even in the busiest marketplace. Here's the thing. Think about baking a cake. If the recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, and you only put in 1.5 because your measuring cup is off, the cake won't turn out right. It crumbles. It's not fair to the cake. In the same way, if a baker uses too little flour because their scale is wrong, or on purpose, it's not fair to the person buying the bread. That small unfairness can break trust, one loaf at a time, making people feel unsafe and uncertain. The Romans knew that these small acts of fairness, repeated day after day, built something much bigger, a sense of security, a belief in justice, a quiet strength within a community. It showed that even in the busiest marketplace, kindness and truth could win. It reminds us that trust isn't just about big promises. It's often found in the quiet, honest ways we deal with each other, even over something as simple as a pound of apples. The right to vote, who could, and what it meant. Have you ever stopped to truly think about what it means to vote? To step forward, to speak your mind, to help shape the world? In ancient Rome, this incredible idea of having a say was born, but it looked very different from how we experience it today. For centuries, the right to vote was not for everyone. Here's the thing. It belonged almost exclusively to free, adult male citizens. Imagine living in a society where your destiny was constantly decided by others, simply because you weren't born a man, or because you were enslaved, or perhaps because your family came from a different town. Even if you lived and worked in Rome, it must have felt like an invisible barrier, a constant reminder that your voice, your thoughts, your hopes didn't quite measure up. Women, for instance, were pillars of Roman life, raising families, managing households, but they could never cast a ballot. Enslaved people, though they built much of Rome, had no say in politics whatsoever. This wasn't just about picking a leader. It was about the very idea of belonging, of being fully recognized as a person with agency. To vote meant you were a full member of the Roman club, a citizen with power. Think about it like this. Imagine your school has a committee that decides important things, like what events happen or what new clubs can start, but only students who play a certain sport are allowed to vote for it. Everyone else, even though they go to the same school and are affected by these decisions, can only watch. That feeling of being on the outside, knowing your opinion could help, but having no way to express it, that's a glimpse into the emotional weight many felt in Rome. It meant your identity, your worth, was partly defined by holding that precious right. So, While Rome gave us the concept, it also painted a clear picture of how excluding voices can create deep inequalities. It makes us truly appreciate humanity's journey to open those doors, so everyone's voice can finally contribute to the grand decisions that shape our shared future. When disputes happen, how Rome tried to solve arguments. Have you ever felt that knot in your stomach when an argument starts? That deep, uneasy feeling when words get sharp, and you just want things to be fair again? The ancient Romans knew this feeling well. They understood that disagreements are just part of being human. People argue over land, over debts, over a neighbor's goat wandering into their garden, and that's why they created their elaborate system of laws, not just for grand crimes, but for the everyday bumps and clashes of life. Here's the thing. For an empire as vast as Rome's, keeping the peace wasn't just a nice idea. It was essential. Imagine a world where every small argument could spiral into a blood feud, where there was no one to turn to, no clear path to justice. Chaos would quickly take over. Rome tried to stop that. They built courts and trained judges. They wrote down rules, like those found in the 12 tables, so everyone could see what was expected. The goal was to provide a way, a place, where conflicts could be heard calmly, evidence weighed, and a fair decision reached. Think about a sports game. If two players have a dispute on the field, they don't just fight it out forever. There's a referee, someone who knows the rules. The referee listens, watches, and then makes a call based on those rules. This helps the game continue, fair and square. Roman judges were a bit like those referees. They aimed to apply the law, to mend the broken thread of an argument, making sure everyone felt heard and that a just outcome was reached. And that's why it matters. The Romans, long ago, wrestled with the same human need for order and fairness that we still feel today. Their efforts remind us that finding peaceful ways to solve our arguments, to truly make things right, isn't just about avoiding trouble. It's about building a better, stronger community, one disagreement at a time, striving for a peace that allows us all to thrive. Land ownership, the Roman idea of real estate. Have you ever really thought about what it means to own a piece of the earth? Not just borrowing it or living on it, but truly owning it. The Romans understood this feeling better than almost anyone. For them, land wasn't just dirt and trees. It was the deepest kind of power. It was security for your family. It was where your story began, and where it would hopefully continue for generations. Imagine how precious that felt. A soldier returning from war, given a small plot of land. That wasn't just a gift. It was his entire future. It was a place to grow food, to build a home, to raise children. It meant dignity. And for the very wealthy, owning vast amounts of land meant immense influence, the kind that could shape cities and laws. But here's the thing, this idea of absolute ownership also created huge struggles. Many people had no land at all, and they watched others prosper, sometimes just a few fields away. It must have felt like looking through a window at a warm, bright home you could never enter. That feeling of unfairness, of yearning for a stable place, runs deep in human history. Think about your favorite blanket. It's just fabric, right? But it's your blanket. You know its history, how it feels. It offers comfort. It holds memories. If someone tried to take it, you'd feel a pang, a sense of loss. For the Romans, land was like that, but on a massive scale. It wasn't just a personal comfort. It was their whole world. Their identity was tied to it. Their legacy was buried in its soil. So, the Roman idea of real estate wasn't just about property lines on a map. It was about who had the right to belong, to build, to dream. It was about the very foundation of their lives. And that's why it still matters today. It's a quiet reminder that our connection to the land beneath our feet, and the rules we make about who owns it, can hold so much power over our hopes and our destinies. It asks us to consider the real weight of owning something truly permanent. Public safety, laws for fire, floods, and danger. What does it truly mean to feel safe? To trust the ground beneath your feet, that a spark won't become an inferno, or that the river won't suddenly claim your home. For the ancient Romans, just like us, these worries were real. They lived in a world where nature's power could turn lives upside down. Their bustling cities, with homes packed close and many buildings made of wood, were always at risk. A single cooking fire, left unattended, could spread, turning a neighborhood to ashes. The mighty Tiber River, the lifeblood of their city, could also swell with rain, bringing devastating floods that wiped away livelihoods and lives. So, the Romans created laws not just to punish, but to prevent disaster. These weren't about revenge, they were about foresight. They established rules for building construction, how far apart homes needed to be, and even who was responsible if a fire started. They had regulations for clearing river channels to manage floods. Here's the thing, these laws came from a deep, shared understanding that public safety isn't just one person's job, it's everyone's. Think of it like this. Imagine your school. When a fire alarm sounds for a drill, everyone knows their role. You follow the rules, move quickly, and help keep others safe. No one ignores the warning. Roman laws for public safety worked in a similar way. They were a collective agreement, a silent promise, that each person's actions contributed to the well-being of the whole city. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? These ancient laws whisper a timeless truth. Our safety, our peace, our very existence, often depend on how we choose to live together. They show us that from early civilizations, humanity understood that true strength comes from protecting each other, from building a community where everyone feels a shared sense of responsibility. It reminds us that our quest for safety is a journey we take together, always. The emperor's word. When one man made the rules, have you ever wondered what it would be like if just one person held all the power to make every rule? Imagine if your entire city, your state, or even your whole country was run by the words of only one person. In ancient Rome, for long periods, this was exactly the case. The emperor's word was the law, shaping every single aspect of life. Don't think about that. It wasn't always like this. For hundreds of years, Rome was a republic. People had a say, and laws were debated by different groups. This system aimed for balance, though it was often messy. But over time, as Rome grew vast and faced many challenges, power shifted. Emperors rose. With them came the idea that one man could make all the decisions. His pronouncements, his simple statements, became the rules everyone had to live by immediately. No voting, no long debates, just his will. Here's the thing, this kind of power is immense, almost overwhelming. It could bring order quickly, building magnificent things like roads and aqueducts. But it also carried a heavy burden and a huge risk. The fate of an empire rested on one mind. Imagine if your coach for a sports team could suddenly change every rule of the game in the middle of a match. Not just a new strategy, but literally how you score points, or what counts as a foul. The entire game would instantly transform based on one person's mood or idea. That's a bit like what it was. The well-being of millions, their very freedom, could turn on one man's decision. And that's why it matters. What happens when fairness and justice depend entirely on the character and wisdom of one person? It makes you reflect on how precious it is when many voices contribute to the rules we live by. It reminds us that power, especially absolute power, needs incredible wisdom and care. One person's word can build a civilization or reshape it in ways that echo through time, deeply affecting countless lives. Freedom and slavery, the Roman divide. Have you ever stopped to think about what it truly means to be free? To wake up each day and know your choices are your own, that your path is yours to create. In ancient Rome, this fundamental feeling of being in control was a privilege, not a given. It was a sharp, heartbreaking divide that shaped every part of their world. On one side stood the free people, citizens with rights, voices, and the ability to decide their own future. On the other, millions lived as slaves, their very existence owned by another. Imagine being born into a world where your laughter, your tears, your thoughts, none of them were truly yours. You couldn't decide what work you'd do, where you'd live, or even who you could love. Your owner made those decisions. People became slaves in many ways, captured in faraway wars, sold because of overwhelming debt, or simply born to enslaved parents. And here's the thing, many were highly skilled, brilliant doctors, talented artists, wise teachers, but their talents, their minds, belonged to someone else. They were treated as property, not as people. This wasn't just about hardship. It was about the crushing weight of having your human spirit denied. Think of it like a beautiful, vibrant seed, bursting with potential to grow into a magnificent tree. But what if that seed was planted in a tiny, locked box, never allowed to reach for the sun, never allowed to put down its own roots? The potential is still there, but it's trapped, unable to become what it's meant to be. That's a small glimpse into the profound loss of self that slavery imposed. The Romans built incredible cities, laws, and empires, yet their foundation rested on this deep, painful injustice. It makes us truly value the gift of personal liberty. It reminds us that the ability to simply be ourselves, to make our own way in the world, is one of the most precious things we can ever possess. And that's why it matters to remember this divide, so we can always seek a world where everyone knows true freedom. The power of a promise. How Rome defined agreements. Have you ever made a promise that felt heavy, like a serious agreement you just had to keep? Think about that feeling. The weight of your word, the hope that someone else will keep theirs. It's a fundamental part of how we live, how we trust each other. Long ago, the Romans understood this feeling deeply. For them, a promise wasn't just a casual statement, it was a cornerstone of their entire society. They called it fides, a word meaning trust, faith, loyalty, and the binding power of an agreement. Here's the thing, when a Roman made a deal, it wasn't just words spoken into the air. It was a sacred bond, an unbreakable commitment. Their laws reflected this. They didn't just have rules about what you agreed to. They had rules about the spirit of the agreement, ensuring fairness when promises were made. Imagine you and a friend decide to build a fort. You agree who brings tools, who gathers branches. If one of you doesn't show up, or brings the wrong stuff, the whole project falls apart, right? That's because you had an unspoken agreement. Roman law took that idea and made it formal for everything, from buying land to selling a goat. They knew that without dependable agreements, their world would be chaotic. There's what I found. Without people keeping their word, society couldn't function. So, what does this tell us? It shows that even thousands of years ago, people knew how important it was to stand by your word. That deep sense of responsibility, that knowing look in someone's eyes when they shake your hand and mean it. That's a legacy from Rome. It reminds us that trust isn't just a nice idea. It's the very glue that holds our communities and friendships together, and that's why it matters. Guarding the borders, laws for defending the empire. Have you ever stopped to think about what makes a place feel truly safe? Maybe it's the walls of your home, or the rules that keep your school peaceful. For the ancient Romans, protecting their vast empire, stretching across mountains and seas, was one of their most important jobs. It wasn't just about building forts or training soldiers. It was about creating laws, deep and serious, that wrapped around their lands like an invisible shield. These rules shaped an entire way of life, a constant vigilance felt by everyone. These laws made sure the borders were always watched, always ready. They set rules for who could live near the edges of the empire and what they had to do to help defend it. Think of it like your own body. Your skin acts as a border, right? And inside, your immune system has countless rules, a whole set of laws, to guard against anything harmful trying to get in. When something breaches that border, your body springs into action, driven by an ancient need to protect itself and stay well. Rome's laws for guarding its borders worked in a similar way, but on a massive scale. They were about more than just fighting battles. They were about building roads to move troops quickly, about placing watchtowers where they were most needed, and even about how people farmed near the frontiers, making sure the land could support soldiers if trouble came. It was a constant, careful effort, a shared burden, that asked everyone to play their part in keeping the Roman world secure. The weight of this responsibility rested on many shoulders. Sometimes, these rules felt heavy, a constant reminder of the dangers lurking just beyond. But they also brought a strange comfort, a sense that the Roman way of life, its art, its ideas, its people, were worth fighting for. It was a deep understanding that to protect what you love, you must first define its boundaries. And so, these laws weren't just about defense. They were about holding on to something precious, a shared dream of safety and stability that echoed through generations, showing us today that the desire for security is a truly human thing. Education and law. Training the next generation of jurists. Have you ever wondered why we have rules, or how we decide what's fair? Imagine ancient Rome, a long time ago. For them, understanding laws wasn't just about knowing facts. It was a deep journey, a powerful way to train your mind. It was meant to shape leaders who could guide their society. Romans believed their huge empire needed brilliant legal thinkers, people who did more than just read laws. They needed jurists, these smart scholars, to figure out what laws meant, debate them, and even help make new ones that would last. Young Romans hoping to serve their city, maybe as judges or leaders, would start an amazing education. They didn't just sit in classrooms reading scrolls. Instead, they would follow famous lawyers. They'd go to court, listen to big arguments, and discuss complex problems. They learned to really look at a situation, to find the true meaning behind words, and to see how one rule might change lives. It wasn't about getting answers. It was about learning how to ask the right questions. Think of it like learning to code a video game. You don't just memorize the computer language. You learn how those lines work together, why they make the game happen. You learn to solve problems and build something complex. That's what Roman legal training aimed for. Building minds to handle the messy, real-world problems of justice. That deep way of learning law, focusing on careful thought and understanding, wasn't just for Rome. It actually shaped how law is taught in many places today. It reminds us that truly understanding a system, whether it's a legal code or just the rules of friendship, means looking deeper. It means asking why, trying to understand others, and using that smart thinking to help build a fairer, kinder world. One where choices are made with both intelligence and heart. From law to empire, how laws helped Rome grow. Have you ever thought about what truly builds something great? Something that can last for centuries, like a massive empire. For ancient Rome, it wasn't just armies or powerful leaders. It was something quieter, deeper, their laws. Imagine a plant. It needs strong roots and a sturdy stem to grow tall. For Rome, laws were those roots and that stem. They weren't just about telling people what not to do. They were about building trust, a shared understanding of right and wrong, of what was fair. Think about a super-fast bullet train. Every single part needs to follow rules to work together perfectly. If one small part breaks, the whole train can derail. Rome was much like that train. As it grew, bringing in new lands and different people, its laws became the steady tracks and clear signals. They kept everything moving forward in a shared direction. These laws created order, a predictable world where people could build homes, start businesses, and feel safe. This stability and shared understanding were incredibly powerful. It allowed Romans to dream bigger, to build incredible roads and aqueducts. It let them spread their ideas. When people felt protected by the same clear rules, no matter where they came from in the growing empire, they began to feel like they truly belonged. This feeling of belonging, this shared fabric of justice, made Rome incredibly strong. It wasn't just brute force. It was the quiet, consistent hum of law that patiently held everything together, allowing a civilization to thrive. So, here's the thing. Laws, at their best, aren't just chains that bind us. They are threads that connect us. They build the unseen framework for our shared world, allowing us to grow, to reach, to imagine a future together. They are the silent promise that even in a changing world, some things will remain steady, allowing new life to flourish. Setting boundaries, laws for neighbors and land asterisk. Setting boundaries. Laws for neighbors and land asterisk. Have you ever thought about where your space ends and someone else's begins? It's a simple question, but it gets to the heart of something truly deep. Imagine living in a world where there were no clear lines, no agreed upon rules for the land we share. It sounds chaotic, right? The ancient Romans, long before our time, understood this feeling. They knew that for people to live together, to build great cities and a lasting society, they needed to draw invisible lines, and sometimes very real ones, between properties. These weren't just about fences. They were about respect. Their laws for neighbors and land were all about preventing arguments and creating peace. Think about it. A farmer's field next to another's shared water source, or even just the branches of a tree growing over a wall. Who owned what? Who was responsible for what? The Romans had specific rules, like how far a building had to be from a road, or what to do if your neighbor's tree roots started damaging your property. It wasn't about being mean. It was about preventing small problems from becoming big, bitter fights. It was about creating a sense of order, so everyone knew where they stood. It's a bit like a sports game, or even a board game. Without clear rules about where the ball goes out of bounds, or which spaces are yours and which belong to another player, the game would fall apart. Everyone would argue, and no one would truly enjoy playing. These Roman laws were the rulebook for living. They recognized that true freedom doesn't come from having no limits, but from understanding those limits, so everyone can thrive within them. It makes you realize how much peace relies on these quiet understandings. Strong communities are built not just on grand gestures, but on the everyday agreement of where one person's world meets another's, and the mutual respect that quietly flows across that line. It's a powerful, timeless lesson about shared space and shared responsibility, echoing through the centuries. your name, your legacy, how Rome handled wills and heirs. Have you ever thought about what you might leave behind? Not just your old shoes or your favorite game, but something deeper. The ancient Romans thought about this a lot. They had this idea that when someone died, their life didn't just vanish. Their name, their property, their stories, these things continued through the people they chose. This was handled through something called a will. It was a written plan, a serious document, that decided who would get what. But it was more than just dividing up stuff. It was about passing on a family's power, its honor, its very essence. For Romans, your legacy was everything. It wasn't just about money. It was about keeping your family's name strong, making sure your reputation lived on. Imagine your family as a long, flowing river. When you're gone, you want the river to keep flowing, strong and clear, not to dry up or get lost. Choosing an heir was like choosing who would guide that river next, making sure it reached future generations. It was a heavy decision, filled with hope and sometimes a bit of worry. They wanted to make sure their impact on the world, however big or small, didn't just fade away with their last breath. Think about a school club you love, maybe the drama club or the coding team. When the seniors graduate, they don't just disappear. They pass down their knowledge, their leadership, maybe even a special playbook or a secret coding trick to the next group. They pick someone they trust to keep the spirit alive. That's a bit like how the Romans saw wills and heirs. It's not just about things. It's about carrying on a purpose, a story, a connection. So, a will in Rome was a powerful promise to the future. It reminded everyone that our lives are connected, one generation to the next. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what parts of your life, your ideas, your kindness, might ripple out and touch the lives of people you'll never even meet. It's a quiet thought, but it reminds us that every day, we're building something that lasts, even if we don't always see it. We're all part of that long, flowing river. The courts of Rome, different places for different problems. Have you ever stopped to think about how we solve big problems, or even small ones, and how important it is to find the right person or the right place to help? It's something ancient Romans understood deeply. They knew that not every argument or every wrong deed could be fixed in the same way. So, here's what they did. They created different courts for different kinds of trouble. Imagine your body. If you break your arm, you go to one kind of doctor, an orthopedist. But if you have a sore throat, you go to a different one, a general practitioner. And if your heart is giving you trouble, you see a cardiologist. Each doctor has special training for specific problems. It's like that with the Roman legal system. But for society's pains instead of your body's, there were courts for every day. Arguments between neighbors, maybe about a fence or a stray goat. Then there were much more serious courts, where judges dealt with big crimes like theft or violence. And for complex business deals or disagreements about property, there were yet other specialized places. It wasn't about having more rules, but about having the right kind of understanding and the right kind of process for each unique situation. They understood that justice isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. This wasn't just smart, it was deeply human. It showed that they recognized the many layers of people's lives and the different kinds of hurts or wrongs that could happen. It tells us that true justice often means looking closely, listening carefully, and finding a path that genuinely fits the specific story. It's about treating each problem with the unique attention it deserves, recognizing its distinct weight and impact. And that's a pretty powerful idea, even today. The 12 tables today, its echoes in our laws. Have you ever thought about how some things, really old things, can still reach into our lives right now? It's kind of amazing, isn't it? Well, the 12 tables, those ancient Roman laws, they're exactly like that. They're not just dusty old scrolls. They're like whispers from a long time ago, still shaping the laws we live under today. Back then, before the 12 tables, laws were often secret, decided by powerful people in the shadows. But then, the Romans demanded justice. They wanted laws written down, clear for everyone to see and understand. This wasn't just about rules. It was about fairness. It was about saying, no one is above the law, and everyone deserves to know what's right and wrong. Think of it like the foundation of a huge building. You might not see it, because it's underground, but without that strong, steady base, the whole building would fall apart. The 12 tables are like that foundation for our modern laws. Ideas like a person being innocent until proven guilty, or that you can own property, or that arguments should be settled fairly in court. These roots reach back to those Roman writings. our system, where laws are public and apply to everyone, and you have a right to defend yourself. These big ideas started small, in Rome. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how the desire for justice, that deep human need for things to be fair and orderly, can travel through thousands of years. It reminds us that even as times change, some core ideas about right and wrong, and how we treat each other, they stay the same. And that's why it matters, because those ancient Romans, in their fight for fairness, laid down a path we are still walking on today, building a world where everyone knows their rights, and everyone has a voice. The idea of due process, a fair hearing for everyone. Imagine standing accused of something you didn't do. How would that feel? A knot in your stomach, maybe, a desperate wish that someone would just listen. This deeply human need for fairness, for a chance to explain, is what due process is all about. It's this powerful idea: everyone deserves a real hearing, a clear path, before judgment falls. The Romans, so long ago, felt this too. Even with all their power, they knew a society needed to be fair. Their ancient laws, like the famous 12 tables, weren't perfect, but they started to lay down early rules for trials. They said, you have a right to know what you're accused of. You have a right to defend yourself. Your accuser had to prove their case. These were the first whispers of a promise that the state, no matter how mighty, had to follow certain steps to ensure justice. Think about a basketball game. If a referee just blew the whistle and called a foul on you without even seeing what happened, how would you feel? Not fair, right? You'd want them to see the replay, to hear your side, to follow the rules of the game. That feeling, that deep desire for things to be fair and for the rules to be followed, is exactly what due process aims for in the real world. It's not just about winning or losing a case. It's about dignity. It's about knowing that your voice will be heard, that you matter, even when things are difficult. This idea, born in ancient Rome, still whispers to us today. Every person, no matter who they are, deserves respect and a fair path to justice. And that's why it matters so much, even now, part of our own laws. Preventing violence, Rome's laws against assault. Have you ever stopped to think about why we have rules that say you can't just hurt another person? It seems so basic, right? Well, back in ancient Rome, thousands of years ago, people knew this was a huge deal for a safe place to live. Their laws against assault weren't just about punishing someone for hitting another person. They were about something bigger, making sure everyone felt safe and respected. If someone physically harmed another person, it wasn't just a simple argument. It felt like a tear in the fabric of the community itself. The Romans had a word for these kinds of wrongs. Injuria, it meant an injustice, a personal offense that hurt not just your body, but your dignity. They understood that when you hurt someone, you don't just cause physical pain, you also take away their sense of security. You make them afraid. This idea, that every person deserves to feel safe in their own space, was truly important. It helped build a strong society. Without rules like these, people would live in fear, and trust would simply disappear. Think about it like this. Imagine you're walking down a busy school hallway. Someone roughly shoves you as they pass. Even if you don't fall or get a bruise, that feeling of surprise, that sudden invasion of your personal space, can really shake you up. It makes you feel uneasy, doesn't it? Roman laws recognized this feeling. They knew that even small acts of violence could unravel peace and lead to bigger problems if left unchecked. It's like a tiny crack that starts in a window pane. If you ignore it, the whole window might eventually shatter. So, their laws aimed to prevent those first, small cracks. So, here's what happened. When Rome made laws against hurting people, they were really saying something deep about how we should treat each other. They were laying down the idea that every person has a fundamental right to their body, their peace, and their personal dignity. This isn't just an old idea. It's a fundamental part of what makes any society fair and kind, even today. It quietly reminds us that our physical safety is a shared treasure, something we all protect for each other, across generations. Roman contracts, making sure deals were kept. Have you ever made a promise to someone that felt like a really big deal? Maybe you promised to help a friend with a tough chore, or maybe your parents promised you something special if you worked hard. That feeling of a promise, the hope that it will be kept, and the disappointment if it's broken, it's a powerful human thing. The Romans understood this deep feeling very well, and that's why they created their laws about contracts. Here's the thing. A contract was more than just words on a piece of paper for them. It was a serious agreement, almost like a sacred vow. In their world, if you promised to sell someone land, or build a house, or even just lend a tool, your word was supposed to be your bond. People relied on these agreements to live their lives, to trade, and to feel safe. If someone broke a contract, it didn't just cause a business problem, it chipped away at the trust that held their whole society together. It could hurt someone deeply, ruining their livelihood or their peace of mind. Think about it like this. Imagine you and your friends agree to pool your money to buy a really cool game console together. You all promise to pay your share and take turns playing. If one friend suddenly decides not to pay, or hogs the console, it's not just annoying. It breaks the agreement, and it hurts the trust you have in that friend. That trust is super important, right? The Romans felt this, but on a much larger scale, affecting whole families and towns. Their laws made sure that promises weren't just whispered words, but real commitments. They knew that for people to live together, to trade, and to build things, they had to be able to count on each other. It shows us how deeply we need to trust one another to make our world work. And that's why, even today, the simple idea of keeping your word, of honoring a deal, still matters so much to our hearts and to our laws. Protecting the innocent, a core idea in Roman justice. Have you ever felt truly misunderstood? Like someone might blame you for something you didn't do, and you just wished they'd listened? That heavy, unfair feeling. The Romans knew that feeling. They understood how terrible it would be to punish someone who was innocent, and so, they worked to build a justice system protecting people from false accusations. This wasn't just about being nice, it was about making society strong. Imagine if you couldn't trust the people in charge to be fair. If innocent people were routinely punished, no one would feel safe, and everything would start to fall apart. So, here's the thing. They believed it was always better for a guilty person to go free than for an innocent person to suffer. This idea, that everyone deserves a fair chance, even when accused, was a huge step forward for humanity. Think about building a strong tower. You don't just focus on the top. You make sure the base is super solid, right? If the foundation isn't stable, the whole thing will eventually fall down. Protecting the innocent was like that solid foundation for Roman justice. They knew if innocent people were harmed, their legal system would crumble. It shows a deep respect for each person's life and their worth. So, what does this tell us? Even thousands of years ago, people understood something truly important. They knew a society's true strength isn't just about big armies or grand buildings. It's about how you treat your most vulnerable. It's about how you stand up for those who might not have a voice. And that's why it matters today. The echo of those Roman laws reminds us that every person's dignity and their right to be truly seen is a treasure we must always protect. Public services. How Rome provided for its people. Have you ever stopped to think about all the things your town or city gives you? Things we just expect to be there, like clean water flowing from your tap, or smooth roads to drive on, or even just feeling safe when you walk around. For the ancient Romans, these kinds of services weren't just a nice extra. They were the very heartbeat of their vast empire. They understood something profound. A society can only truly thrive if its people are cared for, if their basic needs are met. This was Rome's commitment, to build and maintain the things that served everyone. It wasn't just about power or conquest. It was about something deeper, the idea that a strong community is built on shared resources and a common good. When people felt supported, when they could trust that their leaders would ensure water, roads, and even public baths were available, it created a sense of belonging. It made the empire feel like home, not just a place where taxes were collected. Imagine the feeling of relief, walking miles to a distant river, only to suddenly have fresh, clean water piped right into your neighborhood. Think of it like the circulatory system in your own body. Just as your heart pumps blood to every organ, bringing nutrients and taking away waste, Rome's public services were the veins and arteries of its empire. Aqueducts brought life-giving water, roads connected distant towns like nerves, and sewers carried away disease, keeping the body of Rome healthy. If one part failed, the whole system suffered. This wasn't just practical, it was deeply human, acknowledging our shared vulnerability and our need for each other. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about how much we rely on these unseen hands that keep our world running. The Romans, so long ago, laid the groundwork for this understanding that a true civilization isn't just about grand buildings or powerful armies, but about the quiet promise that we will look after each other. creating a world where everyone can live with dignity. It's a reminder of what truly lasts. Building dams and aqueducts, laws for big projects. Think about something truly huge, like a towering dam or an aqueduct stretching for miles across a landscape. How do you even begin to build something so immense, something that needs thousands of hands and years of effort? It's not just about strong stone and clever engineering, it's about people. And here's the thing, people need rules. The Romans knew this deeply. When they planned to bring fresh water across vast distances or hold back entire rivers, they understood that human cooperation was the real challenge. These were big projects in every sense, not just in size, but in the way they touched countless lives. So, they created laws. Laws that decided who owned the land the aqueduct would cross. Laws about who would pay for the stone, the workers, the tools. Laws that made sure the water was shared fairly once it arrived in the city. Imagine a time without clear rules for such massive undertakings. It would be chaos, right? Disagreements over property, arguments about costs, confusion about who was responsible. The Roman laws for these projects were like the blueprints for human interaction itself. They showed a deep understanding that grand visions only come to life when society agrees on a common path, bound by clear principles of justice and public good. They weren't just thinking about the now, but the generations who would benefit from clean water and fertile land. Think of it like a really big group project in your English class, maybe designing a whole new school. If everyone just started drawing different parts without talking, or if someone decided they owned the art supplies, it wouldn't get done. You need a plan. You need rules about who does what, and how to deal with problems. These Roman laws were exactly that, but on a scale that shaped an empire. These ancient Roman laws weren't just about technical details. They were about building trust, about ensuring fairness, and about creating a shared future. They remind us that even the most incredible structures, the ones that still stand today, are built not just with stone, but with the foundation of human agreement, empathy, and a deep, quiet faith in what we can achieve together. They teach us that true strength comes from cooperation, guided by wisdom. The law of nations. How Rome dealt with other countries. Have you ever wondered how people from different countries manage to get along? How do they agree on what's fair when they meet, trade, or even disagree? Rome faced this exact question as their empire grew, touching lands and peoples with all sorts of different laws and customs. They couldn't just force Roman law on everyone. So, they developed a brilliant idea, the law of nations, or just gentium. Here's the thing, this wasn't just for Roman citizens. This was a set of rules and ideas that Rome believed applied to all people, no matter where they came from. It was based on common sense, on principles that felt right and natural to most people. Imagine a Roman merchant trying to buy goods from an Egyptian trader. They both needed to agree on things like property ownership, contracts, and how to settle disputes. The law of nations provided that common ground, a universal legal language everyone could understand and respect. Think about your school. You have specific rules for students, right? But then there are also unspoken rules that apply to everyone in the building, students, teachers, even visitors. Like, you don't just take someone else's belongings, or you respect personal space. These aren't just student rules. They're like common human decency rules for that shared space. The Roman law of nations was like that, but for the vast, diverse world they interacted with. It was about recognizing that some ideas of right and wrong are shared, regardless of culture. This Roman concept reminds us that even across vast distances and different ways of life, there's a deep human desire for understanding and fairness. It's a quiet whisper from history, telling us our shared humanity can build bridges, not just walls. Even thousands of years ago, people dreamed of a world where justice wasn't just for one group, but for everyone. That longing for universal fairness still shapes how countries connect and cooperate today, showing our common search for what is good and just. Getting divorced. Why Roman couples split up? Have you ever thought about why some friendships or partnerships don't last? Maybe you grow apart, or what you wanted at the beginning just isn't what you need anymore. For Roman couples, ending a marriage could feel a lot like that, though their world had very different rules. Here's the thing. Roman marriages often weren't just about two people falling in love. They were big deals for families, connecting powerful names, making sure wealth stayed together, or even helping a father gain political influence. Love could grow, sure, but it wasn't always the main reason for saying I do. So, when these important family or money reasons stopped making sense, or when personal unhappiness grew too much, Roman law made it surprisingly simple to separate. A husband or a wife could often just declare the marriage over. No big, dramatic court battle was always needed, unlike in many times after them. Imagine trying to build a strong bridge, but the foundations on one side start to crumble, or the two sides just can't meet in the middle anymore. You have to decide if you keep building on shaky ground or find a new path. That quiet breaking apart, that feeling of a shared life-changing direction, was a deeply human experience for them too. It reminds us that even with different laws and customs, the hopes and heartbreaks of relationships aren't new. People then, just like us now, sought connection, and felt the sting when that connection changed or dissolved, leaving an echo of what once was. The power of the plebs, how common people gained rights. Have you ever felt like your voice wasn't heard, like the rules were made by others, and you just had to go along with it? Imagine living in ancient Rome, where society was split in two. There were the patricians, a small group of super-rich, powerful families, and then there were the plebs, the common people. This wasn't just about money, it was about power. For a long, long time, the patricians held all the cards. They made the laws, they were the judges, they ran everything. The plebs, who were most of the population, had almost no say. Their lives were controlled by rules they didn't help create, and sometimes those rules felt incredibly unfair. It's a bit like playing a game where only one person decides all the rules, and they can change them any time to make sure they always win. And you, and everyone else, just have to play along. That feeling of powerlessness, that quiet frustration, built up for centuries among the Roman plebs. But here's the thing, common people, when they come together, have an incredible strength. It's not a strength of armies or riches, but a strength of spirit, of numbers, and of a deep, simple desire for fairness. They didn't just accept their fate. Slowly, bravely, the plebs started to push back. They went on strike, refusing to work or fight in wars. They even threatened to leave Rome completely and start their own city. This was a huge deal, because Rome relied on them. Their actions were a loud, clear message. We matter, our lives matter, and we deserve a voice. Over many years, through peaceful protest and sheer determination, they won huge rights. They got their own elected officials, called tribunes, who could actually block laws unfair to them. It was a massive victory, a testament to the idea that everyone's contribution counts. This story teaches us something truly profound. It shows how the human heart, when it yearns for justice and stands together, can slowly but surely change even the most deeply set systems. It reminds us that real power often comes from the collective will of ordinary people, and that the fight for equal rights, though long and hard, is always worth it. It's a quiet echo from history, whispering that our individual voices, united, can shape the world. Laws against bribery, trying to keep government clean. Have you ever felt like something just wasn't fair? Like someone got a special advantage, not because they earned it, but because they knew the right person, or perhaps paid for it? This feeling, this deep sense of injustice, is why the ancient Romans, just like us, struggled with something called bribery. Here's the thing. Bribery happens when someone in power, maybe a leader, a judge, or someone who makes decisions, accepts money or a gift to do something they shouldn't, or to give someone unfair treatment. Imagine a soccer game, right? The referee, who is supposed to be completely neutral, suddenly starts calling fouls only against one team, giving them a disadvantage. Then you find out someone from the other team gave the ref an expensive gift before the game. How would that make you feel? Angry, cheated, like the whole game was a lie. That's how bribery poisons a government. The Romans saw it, clear as day. They understood that if officials could be bought, then the laws wouldn't apply equally to everyone. Justice would vanish. Trust, which is the very glue holding a society together, would shatter. People wouldn't believe in their leaders. They'd feel overlooked, unimportant, while others simply paid their way. So the Romans made strong laws against bribery, not just to punish the bad actors, but to protect something far bigger. The idea that everyone deserves fair treatment. They wanted to build a world where decisions were made based on what was right, not on who had the deepest pockets. It's a quiet hope, a dream woven into the fabric of law, that even in the toughest moments, honesty can stand tall. And that's why it still matters today. Intellectual property kind of. Protecting your creations, Have you ever spent hours creating something truly special? Maybe it was a drawing, a story, or a cool song you wrote. That feeling of pride, of putting a piece of yourself into something, is really powerful. But what if someone else came along and tried to say they made it, or just copied it without asking? That would feel awful, wouldn't it? Like your effort was stolen, or your voice silenced. The ancient Romans didn't have laws called intellectual property in the way we do today. They didn't have specific rules for protecting a song's melody or the unique plot of a play. But here's the thing, they did understand fairness and respect for someone's work. If a sculptor created a beautiful statue, that physical statue was his property. If someone tried to damage or steal it, there were laws against that. And if someone copied a writer's scroll, while that copy might not have been legally restricted, falsely claiming authorship could damage the original writer's honor or business. Romans took reputation very seriously. It was less about the idea itself, and more about the reputation and physical representation of that idea. Think about it this way. You spend weeks building an incredible world in a video game, designing every detail. Someone else logs in, copies your entire world layout block by block, and then tries to pass it off as their own to their friends. The game might let them copy the blocks, but it doesn't make it theirs. It doesn't undo your effort. It just feels wrong. The Romans, in their own way, had laws that circled around this feeling. They protected the physical item and the moral right to one's reputation tied to their creations. This idea, even if it was just a shadow of our modern laws, whispers to a deep human need. We want our effort seen. We want our unique spark recognized. It reminds us that some things are more than just objects you can touch. They hold the very essence of someone's imagination and hard work. And that essence, that spark, deserves respect, then and now. The role of judges deciding what's right and wrong. Have you ever had to decide something really big, something where the right answer wasn't clear, and you knew your choice could truly impact someone? That feeling, imagine having it all the time, but for an entire city, or even an empire. That's a bit like what Roman judges faced. Their job wasn't just to know the law, it was to stand in the middle of a conflict, listen to two very different stories, and then, with all their wisdom, decide what was just. It was about finding the truth, yes, but also about trying to make things right when something went wrong. Think about it. Someone might have stolen bread because their family was starving. The law says stealing is wrong, but does that take away the desperation? A judge in ancient Rome had to weigh the letter of the law against the heart of the matter. They carried the weight of justice, knowing their words could change a life forever. This isn't just about rules, it's about the deep human need for fairness, for someone to see your side, to understand the complexities of life. Here's the thing, it's like when two friends argue, and you're caught in the middle. Both of them feel hurt, both have a point. You can't just pick a side quickly. You listen, you try to understand why they're upset, and then you try to help them find a way forward, a way to heal. A judge does this, but with laws, evidence, and consequences that are much, much bigger. They are like the steady hand that guides a ship through stormy waters, trying to keep everyone safe and on course. So, when we think about judges, then and now, we're really thinking about the human search for balance, for compassion mixed with strictness, for wisdom in moments of great uncertainty. It's a profound responsibility, a quiet promise that even when life gets messy, someone is there, trying their best to uphold what is good and true, offering a path toward a more ordered and fair world for everyone. Rules for commerce, making trade fair for all. Have you ever thought about what makes buying something feel right, or selling something and knowing you did it fairly? It's a feeling of trust, isn't it? A sense that everyone involved is playing by the same rules. Well, the ancient Romans thought about this a lot too. They knew that for their society to work, people had to be able to trade and do business without constant fear of being tricked or cheated. They understood that commerce, the buying and selling of goods and services, wasn't just about coins changing hands. It was about human connection, about building a community where everyone felt secure. So, they created laws, careful rules designed to make sure that agreements were honored. If someone promised to sell you grain, they had to deliver that grain. If they borrowed money, there were clear expectations for repayment. And that's why it matters. These rules laid the groundwork for fair exchange. Think about playing a game with your friends. Imagine if one person suddenly changed the rules in the middle of a soccer match, claiming a goal wasn't really a goal. You'd feel pretty upset, right? you'd feel cheated. Roman laws for commerce were like agreeing on the rules before the game even started. They made sure that when people engaged in trade, they knew what to expect. This wasn't just about legal documents. It was about creating a shared understanding, a basic human expectation of honesty. And here's the thing, these old laws, these simple ideas of fairness, reach across centuries to touch us today. They remind us that true prosperity isn't just about how much stuff we have. It's about the peace of mind that comes from knowing that the world you live in, the marketplace you engage with, respects your effort and your trust. It's about building a society where dignity isn't just a word, but a lived experience, even in the smallest of transactions. Citizen soldiers, the link between duty and rights. Have you ever thought about what it means to be part of something important, like a team, a family, or even a country? The ancient Romans certainly did. For them, being a citizen wasn't just about living in Rome. It meant having special rights and serious responsibilities. A major one was serving as a soldier. Imagine being a young Roman man. You could vote, own land, and have a say in your city's future. These were your rights. But here's the thing, those rights came with an expectation. When Rome needed you, you had to pick up a sword and fight. This wasn't a choice for many. It was a duty. It showed you deserved those rights. Think of being on a sports team. You get to play, wear the uniform, share in the win, but your coach expects you to practice hard and do your best. You wouldn't expect a trophy if you never played, right? Romans felt the same. You couldn't just enjoy Rome's safety without being ready to protect it. This idea that your rights were tied to serving created a strong bond. It wasn't just about fighting, it was about belonging. People felt like they truly owned their city because they fought for it. They understood that freedom and safety weren't just given, they were earned, often on the battlefield. So, for us today, what does it mean to be part of a community? What do we owe each other? The Romans remind us that what we cherish most comes with a quiet understanding. Protecting what we love, however we can, is how we truly make it ours. It's a deep connection between giving and receiving. The concept of equity, fair treatment beyond strict rules. Have you ever felt like a rule was fair for most people, but in your specific situation, it just didn't feel right? Like it missed something important about what was truly just? That feeling is what the Romans started to understand, even in their time. They had so many strict laws, carved in stone, telling everyone exactly what to do. But sometimes, life isn't carved in stone. Sometimes, unique situations meant a strict law, meant to be fair, actually caused a deep unfairness. This is where the idea of equity stepped in. It's not about ignoring rules, but about looking beyond them, into the spirit of the law. It asks, what was this law trying to achieve? Was it fairness? Was it justice? And then, given this particular person and their unique circumstances, how can we make sure the outcome truly matches that goal, even if it means bending the strict letter of the rule a little? Think of it like this. A rule might say, everyone gets one slice of pizza, but if one person hasn't eaten all day, and another just had a huge meal, equity would ask if one big slice is truly fair in that moment. It's about finding the balance, the deep sense of rightness, beyond just what's written down. The Romans saw this need. Their judges, called praetors, started to use their wisdom, not just the exact wording, to make decisions that felt more just, more humane. It wasn't about being weak on the law, but about being strong in humanity. It's like when a teacher gives an extension on homework because they know a student is going through a tough time at home. The rule is the deadline, but equity understands life sometimes happens, and that's why it matters. Because true fairness isn't just about following every rule perfectly. It's about seeing the person, understanding their story, and aiming for an outcome that truly feels fair, right down to your heart. It's a quiet whisper of compassion in a loud world of rules, ensuring that justice isn't blind to our shared human experience. When you owe money, Rome's debt laws. Have you ever borrowed something from a friend, and then felt a little pressure until you gave it back? Maybe it was a book, or a video game. That feeling of responsibility. Well, in ancient Rome, owing money was a much, much heavier burden. It wasn't just about a borrowed item. It could be about your whole life. Here's the thing. Rome's debt laws were super strict, sometimes almost unbelievably harsh. If you couldn't pay back what you owed, you could lose your property. But it went deeper than that. For a long time, if a person couldn't pay, they could become a slave to their creditor, the person they owed money to. Imagine that. Your freedom, your very future, could be taken away just because you couldn't make a payment. It wasn't just a financial problem. It was a deeply personal, terrifying one. This was about more than just money. It was about trust and keeping promises in a world where survival depended on order. Think about how a tiny crack in a sidewalk can slowly, over time, become a huge, gaping hole if no one fixes it. That small debt, unaddressed, could grow into something that swallowed a person whole. This shows us what happens when societies struggle with how to balance personal responsibility with basic human dignity. The Romans believed strongly in the idea of keeping your word. Breaking a financial promise felt like breaking a promise of trust to the community itself. So, while these laws might seem incredibly unfair to us today, they make us wonder about the true cost of promises. They remind us that how a society deals with its weakest members, especially when they're struggling, says a lot about its heart. It's a quiet reminder that fairness, and finding ways to help people when they fall, is a powerful kind of law too. Protecting children. Laws about guardianship. Have you ever thought about what happens when a young person, maybe even a child, suddenly has no one to look after them? It's a heavy thought, isn't it? Back in ancient Rome, this was a serious question. They didn't just ignore it. Roman law created something called guardianship, which was essentially a legal promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, especially children. Imagine a child, maybe just a boy or girl whose parents passed away. Suddenly, they're alone, not old enough to manage their family's land or money, or even to make big decisions about their own lives. Roman law stepped in to appoint a guardian. This wasn't just some random person. It was a chosen adult, usually a male relative, who was given the powerful responsibility of looking after the child's well-being and their inheritance. It was about making sure these young, vulnerable lives had a shield, a steady hand to guide them through a confusing and often harsh world. Think about it like this. When you're building a tower with blocks, the very bottom layers need to be strong and stable, right? If those first few blocks are shaky, the whole tower might fall. In a way, guardianship was like providing those crucial, steady base blocks for a young person's life, especially when their natural supports were gone. It wasn't perfect, and things could still go wrong, but the intention was clear: to prevent a child from being utterly lost or taken advantage of. This idea, this deep-seated belief that society has a duty to look after its youngest and most vulnerable members, is something truly profound. It reminds us that even thousands of years ago, people understood the quiet, desperate need for care when life's hardest blows fall. These laws weren't just about property. They were about a fundamental human desire to see innocent lives continue to grow, safely, even after great loss. And that care, that sense of shared responsibility, still whispers to us today, reminding us of what truly matters. The forum where justice was often done. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to stand in a place where the fate of an empire, and even individual lives, was decided? Imagine a town square, but buzzing with a kind of energy you can almost taste, a mix of fear, hope, and raw human drama. That was the Roman Forum. It wasn't just old buildings or a market. It was the beating heart of Rome, where gossip mixed with serious business, and where justice wasn't just talked about, it was shown. Here's the thing. When we think of courtrooms today, they are usually quiet, formal places with closed doors, but back then, the forum was open to the sky, loud, and often crowded. When someone was accused of a crime, or a new law was debated that might affect everyone, it all happened out in the open. Imagine a huge crowd, all watching, all listening, as lawyers argued and judges listened with serious faces. This was a very public display of right and wrong, of what was allowed and what wasn't. For many Romans, the forum was where their daily lives could change in an instant, based on words spoken and judgments made, right there in front of the whole city. Think about a time you had to stand up in front of your class, maybe to give a presentation, or just to answer a question when everyone else was listening closely. Remember that flutter in your stomach, that feeling of being completely exposed and hoping you get it right. Now, imagine that feeling, but your freedom, your reputation, or even your future depended on the words being said, with hundreds of eyes on you. That's a small glimpse of the intense pressure people faced in the forum. It was a place where human emotions ran high, where the constant search for fairness often clashed with personal power and public opinion. And so, the dust of the forum settled on countless stories of triumph and despair, on moments of raw truth and hard decisions, It reminds us that for thousands of years, humans have wrestled with the same big questions. What is truly fair? How do we decide what's right when things get complicated? The Forum, with all its noise and drama, was Rome's powerful answer, a raw and open stage where the endless human journey for justice began to take its shape. Emperors and law, how their decisions shaped Rome. Have you ever really thought about how one person's choices can change everything for thousands, even millions of people? In ancient Rome, this wasn't just a what-if question. It was the powerful reality of living under an emperor. These emperors were not just leaders, they were lawmakers. Their words weren't simply suggestions or advice. When an emperor decided something, that decision instantly became a law for everyone, from the busiest city streets to the quietest farms across the vast empire. Think about it. Before the emperors, Roman laws grew slowly, often debated by many different people. But then, power became concentrated. One mind, one will, could reshape society almost overnight. Imagine the weight of that. A single decree could change what was considered fair in court, how families passed down their property, or even what basic rights a person had. It was a power that felt almost godlike, the ability to etch rules into the very fabric of daily life for generations to come. It's a bit like when you're working on a big group project for school. Usually, everyone discusses, shares ideas, and eventually, you all agree on how to do it. But now, imagine one person, the emperor in this case, could just walk in and declare, "Nope, we're doing it this way," and everyone just has to follow it, no questions asked. Their choice, perhaps made quickly in a quiet room, would suddenly affect every single person on that project, changing its direction entirely. This constant shift, based on one person's vision or even their mood, left a profound and lasting mark. Each emperor, with their unique ideas about justice and order, layered new laws onto the old ones. Sometimes, they brought clarity and peace. Other times, their rulings caused fear or confusion. But here's the powerful truth. Every single one of those decisions, good or bad, shaped the future of Rome. They created the society that followed. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the profound echo of power. How choices made centuries ago still whisper to us today, reminding us of the immense responsibility that comes with shaping the rules for others. The Roman way of adoption, creating new families. Have you ever wondered what truly makes a family? Is it just the people you share DNA with, or is there something more? For the ancient Romans, family was incredibly important, and they had a unique way of creating new ones, through adoption. And it wasn't just for children. Imagine a Roman family, like a senator's, with no sons to carry on their name. Their legacy, their history, everything they had built, could just vanish. This was a deep sadness and worry. So, the Romans developed a legal process where an outsider, sometimes even an adult, could be formally adopted. This was a big deal. When someone was adopted, they didn't just move into a new house. They became a full member, with all the rights, duties, and the family name. It was like a complete family makeover, from the inside out. Think about a puzzle. You have pieces that fit together to make a whole picture. Sometimes, a piece gets lost. Or maybe you find a new, beautiful piece that wasn't originally part of your set, but it fits perfectly, completing the image. That's a bit like Roman adoption. It wasn't about replacing, it was about completing, extending, and enriching the family. It ensured the family's story, its traditions, and its spirit would continue. This Roman practice reminds us that family isn't only about biology. It's a deep connection built on love, on shared purpose, and on the quiet promise to care for one another. It shows how deeply humans have always needed to belong. Sometimes, the strongest ties are the ones we choose to weave ourselves. It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? That families can grow in ways beyond what we first imagine. Laws against cheating, keeping markets honest. Have you ever felt that sinking feeling when you realize someone wasn't straight with you? Maybe they told you something wasn't quite right with the trade, or they didn't deliver what they promised. That feeling, that knot in your stomach, is exactly what the ancient Romans tried to prevent in their marketplaces. Imagine walking through a bustling Roman forum, filled with merchants, selling everything from olives to pottery. How could you trust what you were buying? See, cheating isn't just about someone getting a better deal. It breaks something important: trust. The Romans knew this. They understood that if people couldn't trust the sellers, the whole system would crumble. Why would anyone buy something if they constantly worried about being tricked? So, they created laws. These weren't just about punishing bad people. They were about building a foundation for everyone to feel safe when they traded. It was about making sure that what you saw was what you got, and that promises were kept. Think about it like trading cards with a friend. If your friend consistently hides a tiny tear on a rare card, or claims a common card is actually super rare, you'd stop trading with them. You'd tell others to. Soon, no one would want to trade with that friend. The trust is gone. It's not just about losing one card. It's about losing faith in the whole idea of fair exchange. These Roman laws against cheating weren't just rules written on stone. They were like a promise, whispered from seller to buyer. You can believe me. What I'm offering is real. And that promise, that sense of honesty, makes a huge difference. It allows a community to grow, to connect, and to thrive, because people feel secure in their dealings. When trust breaks, it's not just money lost, it's a piece of connection that crumbles away. So, these ancient laws, from so long ago, remind us of something very basic. They show us that honesty in buying and selling isn't just good manners. It's truly a cornerstone of any strong society. It's about more than just numbers on a ledger. It's about the silent respect we owe each other, and that's why it matters still, even today. Punishment for murder. Rome's harsh sentences. Have you ever considered the weight of a single human life? What happens when that life is tragically, intentionally cut short? For the ancient Romans, taking a life was not just a crime. It was an act that ripped apart the very fabric of their society. They believed deeply in order, in the strict rules that held their world together. Murder shattered that order completely. When someone committed murder in Rome, the consequences were incredibly harsh. This showed how sacred they viewed life, and how dangerous they believed those who took it were. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about sending a clear message, a stark warning. They believed such an act couldn't simply be forgiven. Punishments ranged from exile, forcing someone to leave their home and never return, to immediate execution. Imagine never going back to your family, your city, your entire way of life, all because of one terrible choice, or worse, facing a swift final end for taking another's future. Think about it like this. A human life is like a unique, intricate machine, designed with countless tiny, moving parts. When one part is deliberately destroyed, the whole machine stops. It can't be put back together exactly as it was. The Romans understood this finality. They saw murder as an irreversible destruction, not just of a person, but of potential, of a future that would never unfold. And that's why they met it with an equally irreversible judgment. It makes you think, doesn't it, about the enduring value we place on each other's existence. Even today, societies still wrestle with the deepest questions of justice when a life is taken. It's a quiet reminder of how precious and fragile life truly is, and the profound responsibility we all carry to protect it. The rights of the accused, a step towards fairness. Have you ever felt that sinking feeling when you're blamed for something you didn't do? Maybe a misunderstanding at school, or a rumor that wasn't true. That knot in your stomach, that sense of unfairness, it's a powerful feeling. Now, imagine that feeling, but with much higher stakes. Like your whole future. For a very long time in history, justice wasn't always so fair. If someone in power pointed a finger at you, that might be enough to decide your fate. There wasn't much protection. But then, in ancient Rome, a truly incredible idea began to take root. It was like a tiny, brave seedling pushing through hard ground. This new idea said, just because someone accuses you, doesn't automatically make you guilty. Here's the thing, you have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to know what you're accused of. And, most importantly, the person accusing you has to actually prove their case. This is called the rights of the accused. And it means you are considered innocent until proven guilty. Think of it like a science experiment. You wouldn't just look at a hypothesis and say, yep, that's true, without doing all the tests, right? You need evidence. You need to gather facts, observe carefully, and then, only then, can you draw a conclusion. It's the same in a courtroom. The accuser must present the evidence, and the accused gets to question it, to show their side of the story. This was a massive, quiet shift in how people thought about justice. It wasn't just about punishing wrongdoers. It was about protecting everyone, even those suspected of a crime. And that's why it matters so deeply today. It's a powerful promise, whispered across centuries, that no one should ever have to stand completely alone and helpless against an accusation. It's a recognition that fear can make people jump to conclusions, and that power can sometimes be misused. So, these rights are like a shield, protecting the most vulnerable. It's a foundational belief that a fair process matters more than quick judgment, a steady light guiding us toward a more just world. Because true justice isn't just about punishment, it's about making sure everyone is treated with dignity, every single step of the way. Breaking a contract. What happened when deals fell apart? Have you ever made a promise, really meant it, and then for some reason, it just couldn't happen? Maybe you told a friend you'd help them with a big project, or you agreed to chores around the house. When those kinds of deals fall apart, even small ones, it can feel a little heavy, right? A trust gets a bit shaky. Well, the ancient Romans understood this feeling deeply. For them, a contract was more than paper. It was a sacred bond, a promise between people, sometimes even before the gods. It was about honor, reputation, and how their society worked. Think of it like a carefully built bridge. Each agreement was like another strong support. If one support broke, the bridge could weaken, or even fall for others. Breaking a contract wasn't just an inconvenience, it wounded community trust. Here's the thing, people relied on these promises. A farmer trusted the merchant to buy his grain. The merchant trusted the shipper to deliver it. If one backed out without good reason, it didn't just hurt that one person. It echoed through the system. Imagine you and your classmates are building a giant Lego castle. Everyone has a specific job. Someone builds the walls, someone else the towers. If suddenly the person building the walls just stops, or uses the wrong pieces, the whole project crumbles. That's a bit like a broken contract. The Romans had laws for this, not just to punish, but to fix damage, to restore balance. They knew that broken promises leave scars, not just on people, but on the trust that holds a community together. Because when promises break, it's not just about money or goods, it's about the invisible threads holding us together. It reminds us our word carries immense weight. Honoring it builds a world where everyone feels more secure, more understood. Trust, once lost, is incredibly hard to rebuild, and its absence can leave a lasting chill. Public works laws, building for the future. Have you ever thought about the ground you walk on, the roads leading you home, or the fresh water flowing from your tap? It might seem like these things just appear, but someone had to plan, build, and ensure they lasted. This is exactly what ancient Romans thought about with their public works laws. Imagine Rome, a bustling city, growing bigger every day. The leaders knew their empire wouldn't last if its people lacked strong foundations. So, they created laws, not just for behavior, but for building. These weren't quick fixes. They were deep commitments to create structures serving not only people alive then, but also their children, and their children's children. Think of the mighty aqueducts, incredible stone channels bringing clean water from far-off mountains right into the city. They weren't built for a single year, but for centuries. Here's the thing. It's like when your community decides to build a new public park or a school library. People come together, making rules about how it will be built, who will pay, and how it will be cared for. It's not just for the kids who will play there next summer. It's for the teenagers who might study there years from now, and for families enjoying picnics decades down the line. It's about a shared vision, a promise to take care of each other, even those we haven't met yet. The Romans saw these structures as a legacy, a physical sign of their care and strength. They weren't just building roads and sewers, they were building trust, community, and a future. When we look at an ancient Roman road, still solid after thousands of years, it's not just a path. It's a quiet whisper from the past, reminding us that true greatness comes from building things that last, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who follows. What lasting gifts will we leave behind? The law of treason, protecting the Roman state. Have you ever stopped to think about what truly holds a country together? What keeps a community strong, preventing it from just falling apart? The ancient Romans did, and their powerful answer was loyalty. They understood that, for their vast empire to survive, the very idea of Rome had to be protected, fiercely. This led to their serious laws against treason. Treason, for the Romans, wasn't just about disagreeing with a ruler or speaking badly about an emperor. It was about acts that actively tried to harm the Roman state itself. Imagine someone betraying Roman military secrets to an enemy, or attempting to violently overthrow the government. These were seen as direct attacks on the safety, the power, and the entire way of life for every Roman citizen. For the Romans, the state was much more than just a government building. It was their identity, their protector, and the foundation of their future. When someone committed treason, they weren't just attacking a person in charge. They were attacking the heart of Rome, the shared dream that held millions of diverse people together. It was a profound betrayal of the collective promise. Think about your own body. All your cells work together, right? Your heart pumps, your lungs breathe. But what if some cells suddenly decide to turn against the others, to actively damage the very system they belong to? That's like a sickness, a disease that threatens the entire body. Treason was seen by the Romans as a sickness inside the body of the state, something that could destroy everything built. It was a deep violation of trust. These laws against treason were incredibly serious because the consequences of such betrayal could affect every Roman. They showed how much the Romans valued their peace, their order, and the shared future they were building. It reminds us that trust, loyalty, and a common purpose are fragile things in any society, needing careful protection to survive and thrive, even today. How Rome defined family. Beyond just blood, when you think about your family, who comes to mind? Is it just the people you share blood with? For the ancient Romans, the idea of family, or familia, went much deeper. Here's the thing, they saw family not just as blood, but as a powerful living web of loyalty, duty, and shared life. Imagine a sense of belonging so strong, it shaped everything. In Rome, the paterfamilias, usually the oldest male, was the head. He held incredible power over everyone in his household, not just his children, but also his wife, servants, and even his adult sons and their families. It sounds intense, right? But this wasn't always about harsh rules. It was also about absolute responsibility and protection. He was the anchor, making sure everyone was safe, fed, and had a place. This created a profound sense of structure. People weren't just individuals. They were part of this larger, protective unit. Their identity was tied to their familia. Think about a sports team or a theater cast. You might not be related by blood, but you spend hours together, working towards a common goal. You rely on each other. You feel that deep connection when you win, or even when you lose. You trust them, support them, and have a shared purpose. That's a little like how Roman family felt. It was a bond forged by shared life, shared responsibility, and a deep understanding that you were all in it together. This idea reminds us that family isn't just a label given at birth. It's built through commitment, through caring, and through choosing to stand by others, even when it's hard. The Romans showed us that true connection can be a powerful force. It creates a sense of belonging that shelters us and gives our lives meaning, far beyond any simple bloodline. It's about who you choose to build a life with, who you stand for, and who stands for you. The importance of witnesses. Speaking truth in court. Have you ever wondered what makes us truly believe a story? What convinces us something actually happened? Imagine a disagreement where no one saw it. Everyone has their own version, and there's no way to know what's real. That would be confusing, right? And deeply unfair. The ancient Romans knew this feeling well. They understood that for justice to work, you needed more than just accusations. You needed solid proof. Often, that proof came from people who were there, those who saw and heard what happened. These individuals, called witnesses, were, and still are, incredibly important for finding truth in court. Their job was simple yet profound, to tell exactly what they experienced, honestly. Not what they thought or guessed, but what they knew for sure with their own senses. It's like putting together a puzzle. Each witness brings a piece, a memory, a detail. One piece alone doesn't show the whole picture, but when many honest pieces fit together, a clearer image forms. Think of a science class. If one student sees a reaction, it's interesting. But if every group sees the same reaction, that observation becomes incredibly strong. Each group acts like a witness. The Romans saw this as fundamental. They believed trust in their laws began with trust in people. When someone stepped forward to be a witness, they took on a huge responsibility. They held a piece of the community's trust, helping protect fairness for everyone. Their truth carried immense weight, guiding judges and juries towards what was real and just. It's a powerful idea that simply by speaking what you know to be true, plainly and bravely, you help build a world where things make sense, where fairness is solid and real. This quiet act of courage echoes through history, showing us the deep importance of speaking up for what's right. Rules for public games, keeping entertainment orderly. Have you ever stopped to think why we need rules, even for things that are supposed to be just fun? Imagine a huge concert or a major sports game without any rules at all. it would probably turn into a mess, right? The ancient Romans understood this feeling deeply. Even when they were watching thrilling chariot races or intense gladiatorial contests, Rome loved its public games. These were massive events, drawing huge crowds, filling stadiums with roaring cheers and electric energy. But with so much excitement, there was also a risk of chaos. So, the Romans, with their smart, organized minds, created laws for these games. These weren't just about how the gladiators fought or how the chariots raced. They were also about how the audience behaved, where they sat, and how the entire event was managed. It was about keeping the peace, making sure everyone, from the emperor to the common person, could enjoy the spectacle without fear or disorder. Think about a big school talent show or a basketball game. Everyone is excited, cheering loudly. But what if there were no rules, no assigned seats, no limits on shouting, no clear path to exits? It would quickly become uncomfortable, maybe even unsafe. People would push, some wouldn't see, and the whole point of enjoying the show would be lost. That's why teachers and coaches set guidelines, so the fun can truly happen for everyone. The Roman laws for public games worked in a similar way. They were a quiet promise that even in moments of wild passion and shared joy, there would be a foundation of order. These laws ensured that entertainment didn't become destruction, and that the spirit of community stayed strong. It teaches us that true freedom to enjoy comes with a thoughtful understanding of boundaries, making sure that what brings us together doesn't also tear us apart. The idea of damages, making up for harm caused. Have you ever thought about what happens when someone accidentally, or even on purpose, breaks something that isn't theirs, or worse, causes hurt to another person? It's a moment that feels heavy, right? You feel the sting of what's lost. The Romans, centuries ago, had to figure this out. They asked a big question. How do we fix what's broken? How do we make things right again? This is where the idea of damages comes in. It's a way for the law to say, okay, harm was caused, and now there needs to be a way to balance things. It's not about getting back at someone. Instead, it's about restoring something lost, or at least trying to lessen the weight of that loss. Imagine if a neighbor's ball accidentally shatters your favorite, irreplaceable vase. The vase is gone, but what if they offered to pay for a new, similar one, or money to reflect its value? That's the core idea. It's like when you scratch a friend's borrowed game console. You can't unscratch it, but you can pay for the repair, or replace it. It's about accepting responsibility for the consequences of your actions, even if unintended, and understanding the impact. Think of it like a body healing. When you get a cut, your body doesn't just forget it. It works hard to mend the skin, grow new cells, close the wound. Sometimes there's a scar, a reminder, but the goal is to make the body as whole as possible. Roman law understood this deep human need for things to be made whole. They created rules so that when harm happened, the person who caused it had to offer some form of repair. It wasn't perfect, but it was a powerful step towards fairness and peace. It reminds us that our actions have ripple effects, and that caring for each other means taking responsibility for the paths our choices create. This understanding, born so long ago, still shapes how we try to heal and move forward today. From republic to empire, how laws changed with power. Have you ever stopped to think about who makes the rules in your life? And what happens when the power to make those rules shifts from many people to just one? This is a huge question, and it was deeply felt in ancient Rome as it changed from a republic to an empire. In the Roman Republic, laws were made by elected officials and debated by citizens. It wasn't perfect, but the idea was that people had a voice, even if it was through their representatives. Laws were meant to protect citizens, settle disputes, and keep things fair based on what the community generally agreed upon. There was a sense that the law belonged to everyone, in some way. But then came the empire. Suddenly, one person, the emperor, held incredible power. He was the commander of the army, the chief priest, and often the main lawmaker. The laws still existed, but how they were made, interpreted, and enforced changed dramatically. Instead of reflecting the will of many, laws often reflected the will of one powerful leader. Think about it like this. Imagine your school has a student council that helps make rules for the playground. Everyone feels like they have a say, and the rules are talked about. But then, a new principal comes in and decides all the rules on their own. They might even change rules that were once very important. The rules themselves might look similar on paper, but the spirit behind them, the reason for them, feels different. They come from a single authority, and there's less room for argument or input. This shift in Rome showed how fragile the idea of shared power can be. When one person holds all the strings, laws can become tools to maintain their power, rather than just serving justice for everyone. It makes you realize how much the meaning of justice can depend on who gets to decide what is right and what is wrong. It's a quiet reminder that our voices in making rules really do matter. Laws against forgery. Don't fake it. Have you ever looked at something beautiful, something precious, and known deep down it was real? Now, imagine finding out it was fake, a lie. How would that feel? The Romans understood this feeling perfectly. They knew that truth was the bedrock of everything. If people started faking things, their entire world could crumble. Here's the thing. Forgery is about making something false seem absolutely real. So real that it tricks you. It could be a fake document, a copied signature, or even a made-up story that pretends to be fact. The Romans had powerful laws against this. Like Emperor Sallust's Lex Cornelia de Falsi. This wasn't just about catching criminals. It was about protecting the very soul of their society. They knew that if people couldn't trust official papers, legal agreements, or even someone's last will, then chaos would follow. Think about it like this. Imagine a photo of you and your best friend, a memory you both cherish. Now, imagine someone expertly changing that photo, maybe adding someone else in, or making it seem like you were somewhere you weren't. They share it, and suddenly, your real memory is distorted, questioned. That feeling of your truth being twisted, that's what forgery does on a larger scale. It pollutes the well of what's true. The Romans saw that when someone forged a document, they weren't just tricking one person. They were attacking the trust everyone placed in the system, in the honesty of others. It's like a tiny crack in a massive wall. One crack might seem small, but if more cracks appear, the whole wall eventually gives way. Our world, just like theirs, depends on a shared understanding of what is genuine. When we lose that, we lose a piece of ourselves, a piece of what binds us together. So, standing for the truth, even in small ways, is a quiet act of courage, a promise to keep our world strong and real. The power of the censor, guarding morals and census. Have you ever wondered who makes sure everyone in a big group is living up to their best? Imagine a job so important that it wasn't just about rules, but about the very soul of a city. In ancient Rome, this powerful role belonged to the censor. They were not judges, but something deeper, protecting the heart of Roman identity. Their job had two main parts, both powerful and linked. First, they guarded morals. The Romans had something called mos millennium, which basically means the way of our ancestors, the old good values like honesty, hard work, and deep respect for community. Censors watched over these values like careful gardeners tending a precious plant. If someone in public life wasn't living up to these high standards, the censor could take action, even removing them from their position in the Senate or publicly shaming them. It was a heavy responsibility, built on immense trust and the belief that a great society needed strong character. And then there was the census. This wasn't just about counting people, though they did that every 5 years. It was about assessing each citizen's wealth, property, and family status. This detailed information was vital for things like fair taxes, military service, and deciding who could vote. But it also fed into their moral duties. Knowing everyone's place and contribution helped them understand the health and moral fiber of the Roman community as a whole. Think of it like being on a school project team. Everyone has a role, right? And there's an expectation that you'll all contribute fairly, be honest in your work, and pull your weight. Imagine if there was one person, highly trusted by everyone, whose job it was to make sure not just that the work got done, but that everyone was doing their part with integrity. And if someone was slacking or being dishonest, they could gently, but firmly, call them out to protect the team's honor. That's a bit like the censor's duty. It's a powerful thought, isn't it? That a society would entrust a few individuals with the duty of not just counting its people, but also safeguarding its character and moral strength. It makes you wonder how we, even today, try to protect the shared values that make our communities strong, and how challenging it is to measure what makes a good person or a good citizen. It shows us that laws often reach beyond mere rules, touching the deepest parts of what it means to belong and to be human together. Protecting merchants, laws for safe trade routes. Have you ever stopped to think about what makes buying things feel safe today? Maybe you order something online, or just walk into a store, and you trust it will be there. and you trust you'll get home safely. But imagine a time, long ago, when every journey was a risk. For Roman merchants, taking their goods across vast lands was a gamble against robbers, bad weather, and uncertainty. The Roman Empire was huge, a web of cities and towns that needed to trade. From the grain grown in Egypt to the wool from distant provinces, things had to move. Without clear rules, without protection, it would have been impossible. So, Rome created laws to make these trade routes safe. These weren't just about money. They were about keeping families fed, ensuring cities thrived, and connecting people across thousands of miles. It was about building a foundation of trust. Here's the thing. Think about a game you play with friends. If there are no rules, it quickly becomes unfair, maybe even a little chaotic. You wouldn't feel safe playing, or sure that your efforts mattered. Roman laws for trade were like those essential rules. They set boundaries, punished those who stole, and created a path where merchants could travel with a little less fear, a little more hope. They ensured that when someone sent a shipment, there was a real chance it would arrive, and that quiet assurance, that sense of order, grew into something bigger. It let cultures mix, ideas travel, and the world feel a little smaller, a little more connected. Even now, when you see a truck carrying goods down a highway, or click buy on a website, a piece of that ancient Roman wisdom is at play. It reminds us how deeply we rely on trust, and how a few simple rules, carefully thought out, can bring so much peace and possibility into our lives, letting us reach out and connect across vast distances, just as they did then. The right to assemble. When Romans gathered, have you ever felt that buzz, that feeling of energy, when a bunch of people get together for one reason? Maybe it's a school assembly, or a big family reunion, or even just your friends planning something exciting. That shared feeling, that sense of being part of something larger, is an ancient human need, and the Romans knew it well. They didn't call it the right to assemble exactly, but the idea was strong. Imagine the bustling Roman Forum, a huge open space. People gathered there not just to shop or gossip, but to talk about serious stuff. They'd discuss laws, listen to speeches, and sometimes even vote. It was how ordinary people, or at least Roman citizens, could make their voices heard. This wasn't just about yelling complaints. It was about sharing thoughts, debating ideas, and shaping their world together. It was a place where worries and hopes could become visible. Here's the thing. When voices come together, they create something much stronger than just one voice alone. Think about a choir. Each singer has their own voice, their own part, but when they all sing together, following the music, they create a harmony that is powerful and moving. It fills the room, touching everyone. That's a bit like how the Romans saw gathering. Each person was a note, and together they formed the song of their society. This old Roman idea still matters today. It reminds us that we are not alone in our thoughts or our struggles. When people gather, whether in a town square or even online, they connect. They discover shared dreams and frustrations, and that connection, that ability to come together and speak, is a quiet, powerful force. It shows us that our individual voices, when united, can make a difference, helping to shape the world. Just like in ancient Rome, it's a testament to the power of human community. The law of succession. Who inherits what? In Rome, have you ever stopped to think about what happens to important things when someone can no longer care for them? Like a beloved family pet, or maybe even a special piece of art that's been in your home for ages. For the ancient Romans, these questions weren't just simple thoughts. They were the heart of a deeply serious system called the law of succession. Here's the thing. In Roman society, the father, known as the paterfamilias, was the absolute head of his household. He controlled everything, property, people, even sacred traditions. When he died, it wasn't just about who got his money or land. It was about carefully passing on his vast power, his patria potestas, and his huge responsibilities. This ensured the family stayed strong, its name lived on, and its place in society remained secure. Imagine a really old, very special oak tree in your town square. It's been there for hundreds of years, and everyone knows its story. For generations, a specific family has cared for it, watering it, protecting it, keeping it healthy. When the current guardian grows too old, they don't just walk away. They carefully choose and train the next person to take on that duty. That new person doesn't just get the tree, they inherit the responsibility, the honor, and the burden of its care. That's a bit like what Roman succession felt like. The Romans didn't just worry about possessions, they worried about the soul of the family. The oldest male usually took over, but sometimes an adopted son or even a daughter might step in to keep the family's legacy from fading. This quiet understanding reminds us that our lives are connected in a long chain. What we build, what we value, and what we protect often finds its way into the hands of others, carrying pieces of us into tomorrow. It's a powerful echo of connection across time, linking their world to ours. The role of the Udiles, keeping cities running smoothly. Have you ever stopped to think about the many little things that make your town or city work? Who ensures streets are clean, or that store food is safe? Who organizes big community events? In ancient Rome, many of these crucial, everyday tasks fell to a special group called the Aediles. They weren't the famous generals or powerful senators you hear about, but their work was essential for the beating heart of Roman life. These Aediles were like the city's unseen guardians. They maintained public buildings, like temples and theaters, making sure they were safe and looked good. They also oversaw public games and festivals, which were a massive part of Roman culture and brought people together. But here's the thing that truly mattered. They kept daily life orderly. They made sure markets were fair, that merchants didn't cheat customers, and that food was good. Imagine a world with no rules about what you could sell or how clean public spaces were. It would be messy, chaotic, and dangerous. Think of it like the people who run your school behind the scenes. It's not just teachers, it's also the staff who make sure the lunchroom is clean, hallways are safe, and electricity works. Without them, school wouldn't function. The Aediles did this for an entire bustling city. Their quiet dedication ensured water flowed, streets were passable, and basic needs were met. This let everyone else live their lives without constant worry. So, the legacy of the Aediles reminds us that true strength in any society often lies in the hands of those who diligently care for small, everyday details. Their work teaches us that a good life isn't just about grand laws, but about thoughtful effort to meet everyone's basic needs. It proves that even unseen work creates a strong, peaceful community. Fairness for all. The challenges of Roman justice. Have you ever felt like a game wasn't fair, even if everyone knew the rules? Like maybe the referee made a call that just didn't feel right for your team, even if it was technically correct. Well, that feeling isn't new. Even in ancient Rome, a place famous for its strong laws, true fairness was a really tricky thing. Rome gave us these amazing legal ideas, concepts about justice that felt solid, like strong pillars. But here's the thing, making laws is one step. Making sure those laws work fairly for every single person, in every situation, is a much bigger, harder challenge. The Roman legal system aimed to be fair. In theory, they wrote down detailed laws, created courts, and set up ways for people to accuse others and defend themselves. But it wasn't always a perfectly level playing field. If you were rich or powerful, you often had better access to good lawyers, or maybe even friends in high places who could speak for you. Your status really mattered. If you were poor or didn't have full Roman citizenship, your experience with justice could be very different. It's like being on a sports team where the coach always listens more closely to the captain. Even if another player has a really good point, the rules are the same for everyone, but some voices just seem to carry more weight. This struggle for fairness, this deep human hope that everyone gets treated justly, is something we still think about and work on today. It teaches us that good, clear laws are only the first step. The real ongoing work is in how we, as a society, ensure those laws truly protect and serve everyone, not just the powerful or well-connected. It's about making sure every person has a chance to be heard and understood, no matter their background. This ancient challenge reminds us that the quest for justice is a constant journey, a quiet, important whisper in our hearts that still asks, can we truly make things fair for all? The legacy of Justinian, a huge law collection. Have you ever tried to play a game, but the rules are scattered, confusing, and sometimes even contradict each other? It's frustrating, right? You just want to know what's fair, what's allowed, and how to actually play. Well, imagine that, but with an entire empire's worth of laws. Laws that decided everything from trade to punishment, dating back hundreds of years. That's exactly the problem Justinian, an emperor of the Byzantine Empire, faced around 1500 years ago. The Roman Empire had been around for ages, and its laws had grown like a wild, tangled forest. There were so many decrees, opinions, and old rulings, it was almost impossible for judges to know which ones to use. People didn't know their rights. It was a mess, and it made life feel uncertain and unfair for many. Justinian had a huge, brave idea. He decided to collect, organize, and simplify all of it. Think about trying to gather every single piece of writing from your school, every textbook, every note, every test, and then making it all fit into one clear, easy to understand library. That's the scale of what he tried to do. He brought together brilliant legal minds, and they worked for years. They created what we now call the Corpus Juris Civilis, basically the body of civil law. It was an incredible collection, like a vast, organized map of all Roman legal thought. This wasn't just about making things tidy. It was about building a foundation for justice, for fairness, and for people to live with clarity. It was an act of profound hope, believing that order could bring peace and allow societies to truly thrive. This massive effort wasn't just for his time. It became a guiding light, a blueprint for future legal systems, not just in Europe, but across the world. It showed that laws, when carefully thought out and clearly written, aren't just about telling people what to do. They can be a promise, a steady hand that helps everyone understand their place, their rights, and their responsibilities. And that, in a world often feeling chaotic, is a very powerful, very comforting thought. Laws for land use. How Rome organized its territory. Have you ever looked at a map and noticed how perfectly squared off some areas are? Or wondered why your town has certain zones for houses and others for shops? It seems so normal, almost invisible. But imagine if there were no rules at all for land. Just pure chaos, where anyone could claim any piece of earth, build anything, anywhere. That feeling of uncertainty, of not knowing what's yours or what's public, that's exactly what the Romans set out to fix with their land laws. Here's the thing, as Rome grew, from a small city to a massive empire, managing land became incredibly important. They weren't just thinking about simple farms anymore. They needed laws that decided where cities could be built, how roads would connect vast territories, and who owned the land that made all that possible. It was about creating order from potential mess. These laws weren't just lines on a map. They were about peace, about making sure people knew what they could count on. Think about it like this. When you're playing a team sport, everyone needs to know the boundaries of the field, right? Imagine playing soccer where the sidelines kept changing, or the goalposts could be moved mid-game. It would be confusing, unfair, and no one would be able to play well. Roman land laws were like setting those unbreakable boundaries for their entire civilization. They gave everyone a clear sense of what was theirs, and what belonged to the community. These laws created a kind of quiet trust. They meant that when you invested your effort, your dreams, your very life into a piece of land, you had a legal claim to it. You could build a home, plant crops, and know it wouldn't be taken away randomly. This deep need for stability, for knowing where we stand, literally and figuratively, is a feeling that hasn't changed in thousands of years. It's a powerful reminder that even the most basic rules can shape entire societies, letting people feel secure enough to build something truly lasting. The concept of liability, who's responsible when things go wrong? Have you ever felt that sinking feeling when something goes wrong, and everyone is looking around, wondering who to blame, who should fix it, who should apologize? This feeling, this question of who's responsible, is at the heart of something we call liability. It's about figuring out who bears the weight when mistakes happen or when harm is caused. It's not always easy, but it's really important. Imagine a world where no one was ever truly held accountable. It would be chaos, wouldn't it? No trust, no fairness. The ancient Romans, with all their wisdom, wrestled with this exact problem. They didn't just shrug their shoulders. They built laws, careful rules, to decide who was liable. Was it the person who directly caused the damage, or someone who should have prevented it? They understood that for society to work, people needed to be held responsible for their actions, and sometimes, even for things that happened on their watch. These ideas, born in ancient Rome, are still with us today, shaping how we think about right and wrong, and who pays the price. Think about a simple example. Let's say you're playing catch in your backyard, and the ball accidentally flies over the fence and breaks your neighbor's window. Here's the thing, you didn't mean to break it, but the window is broken because of your action. So, who's responsible for replacing it? Most people would agree you are, or your parents, because the action originated from you. That's liability. It's not just about punishment. It's about making things right, about restoring balance. This concept isn't just about rules and penalties. It taps into something deeper, our shared understanding of fairness. It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences, and that a healthy community requires us to own up to them. It teaches us about empathy, to thinking about how our choices affect others. And that's why it matters, not just for laws, but for how we live together every single day. Protecting veterans, Rome's laws for retired soldiers. Imagine you've spent more than 2 decades, years and years, far from home, constantly training, marching, and facing dangers. You've seen things no one should have to see, felt the fear and the exhaustion, all for your country. Then, one day, it's over. You're done. What happens next? Do you just go back to nothing? Rome, in its wisdom, understood this deep need for security and dignity. Roman laws didn't just forget about their soldiers once the fighting was done. They created ways to honor and provide for these men who had given so much. After 20 or 25 years of hard service, a Roman legionary would get a pension, often a significant sum of money, or a plot of land to farm. This wasn't just a nice gesture, it was a powerful promise. It meant that the sacrifices made on dusty battlefields would not be in vain. It meant a chance to build a new life, to finally put down roots and feel safe. Think about it like this. Imagine being part of a team, maybe a sports team, where you train incredibly hard, day in and day out, pushing your body to its limits. You make sacrifices, miss out on other things, all for the team's success. When your time on the team ends, wouldn't you want to know that your years of effort, your loyalty, were recognized and valued, that you weren't just tossed aside? Rome saw their soldiers as the bedrock of their empire. They understood that these veterans, weary from service, deserved a peaceful return, a measure of comfort in their older years. It was a clear message: we see your sacrifice, and we will care for you. This ancient approach reminds us of something truly important. It's about the deep responsibility we have to those who give up so much for the common good. It speaks to a fundamental human truth, that gratitude, shown through real action, is a powerful force. It shows us that true strength in a society isn't just about winning battles, but about how it cares for the ones who fought them. Laws against kidnapping, keeping people safe. Have you ever stopped to think about what it means to truly feel safe? To wake up in your own bed, in your own home, knowing you are free to be there. It's a feeling many of us take for granted, but it's so important. The security of knowing where you are, and that you are free. The idea of kidnapping is scary, because it rips that feeling away. It's when someone takes a person against their will, stealing not just their location, but their freedom. Imagine being pulled from your family, from everything familiar, into a world of unknown. That fear, that loss of control, is devastating. Long ago, even in ancient Rome, people understood this deep, painful violation. They created laws against taking someone, because it messed up society and caused immense suffering. The Romans valued their social structure and the rights of people, knowing that taking a person was a profound attack. It wasn't just stealing something, it stole a life's direction, a forced separation that tore families apart. Here's the thing, they saw it as breaking a basic rule of how people should treat each other. Think about a little bird's nest in a tree. That nest is its safe home, where it belongs with its family. Now, imagine someone reaching in and taking one of the young birds. That bird is suddenly alone, scared, and lost from its world. That's a glimpse of the fear and confusion a human would feel. So, these ancient laws, born long ago, still whisper to us today. They remind us of a very basic truth. Every person has a right to their own body, their own path, and to the safety of their chosen place. It's a quiet understanding that our freedom to be where we belong, to live without fear, is a cornerstone of being human. And that's why it matters deeply, even now. Roman legal education, learning the rules. Have you ever wondered how people learned the rules that held their whole world together? Not just classroom rules, but the big, important ones that decided right from wrong, fairness from unfairness. For ancient Romans, learning the law wasn't like sitting in a history class. It was something much deeper, a path you walked, often starting very young. Imagine a young Roman, not just reading laws from a book, but watching, listening, and even helping out in the real world of justice. In Rome, if you wanted to become a lawyer or a judge, you didn't just go to a special law school like we do today. Instead, you'd find a famous lawyer, a respected jurisconsult, and follow them around. You'd be their shadow. You'd listen as they advised people, argued cases, and helped create agreements. It was an apprenticeship, a hands-on journey. This wasn't just about memorizing facts. It was about soaking in the spirit of the law, understanding why certain rules existed, and feeling the weight of their purpose. It was about seeing justice play out, not just as words on a scroll, but as real-life decisions affecting families and fortunes. Think about learning to play a musical instrument, maybe the guitar. You don't just read a book about chords. You watch someone play. You feel the strings. You hear the music. You try. You mess up. You try again. And slowly, the music starts to make sense in your hands, in your heart. Roman legal education was like that, a deep, immersive learning, where the meaning of justice slowly revealed itself through experience. It wasn't just about knowing the what. It was about understanding the why and feeling the human story behind every rule. It was about carrying that sense of order, that quiet promise of fairness, forward into the future, shaping the very soul of their society, and in ways we still feel today. The idea of a written law, why it matters so much. Have you ever thought about how important it is to know the rules? Imagine playing a game, any game, where the rules were never written down. What if the person in charge just made them up as they went along, or changed them whenever they felt like it? That wouldn't feel fair, would it? It would feel confusing, maybe even scary, because you'd never truly know what was allowed and what wasn't. Here's the thing. That's kind of how life was for many people before the idea of written law really took hold. Before ancient Rome, and in many places even after, rules often lived only in someone's memory, a king's, a judge's, or an elder's. This meant justice could feel very shaky, very uncertain. What was right yesterday might be wrong today, simply because a powerful person decided so. It left people feeling powerless, unsure of their place, and often afraid. But then, the idea of writing it all down came along. The Romans understood this deeply. They realized that if the rules, the laws, were carved into stone or written on scrolls for everyone to see, it changed everything. It wasn't just some whispered command anymore. It became something solid, something you could point to, like how a clear instruction manual for building something makes sure everyone ends up with the same correct result. So, when laws were written, they became shared. They stopped being just one person's opinion and started belonging to everyone. This means that if a powerful person tried to treat someone unfairly, they could be reminded of the written law. It meant that people had a guide, a promise, of how society was supposed to work. And that's why it matters so much. Written laws bring fairness. They bring a kind of peace, because everyone knows what to expect. They help build a world where trust can grow, because the rules are clear for all. The power of the people. When Roman citizens voted on laws, have you ever felt like your voice truly matters? Like what you say, what you choose, could actually change things for everyone around you. Imagine a time, long ago in ancient Rome, where ordinary citizens, not just kings or emperors, got to stand up and vote on the laws that would shape their daily lives. This wasn't just a dream. It was how things worked during a big part of Roman history, especially in the Roman Republic. People gathered in large assemblies, their voices joining together, deciding on everything from public projects to declarations of war. It's a powerful thought, isn't it? Think about how brave this was. In a world often ruled by force or by just a few powerful people, the Romans tried something different. They believed that when many people agreed, a law had a stronger kind of truth, a deeper sense of fairness. It was about shared responsibility, about everyone owning a piece of the future they were building together. They knew that laws accepted by the many felt more right, and perhaps were followed with more heart, because they were their laws. It's a bit like when your class votes on a big project or decides what charity to support. Each person's vote feels important, right? If the teacher just told everyone what to do, it wouldn't feel the same. But when you all discuss ideas, share opinions, and then raise your hands or write your choice, that decision becomes truly yours. It carries more meaning because you were a part of making it. That's the power the Romans tapped into for their entire society. So, when we look back at these Roman laws, we're not just seeing rules carved in stone. We're seeing moments where human beings, centuries ago, stood together, sharing their hopes and fears, and chose a path forward for their community. It reminds us that there's an incredible, quiet strength when people unite, when their collective will shapes their world. It's a whisper from history, telling us our voices, when joined with others, can truly build something lasting. Rome's lasting legal gift. Why it still affects us today. Have you ever stopped to think about why we have rules? not just at school or home, but for a whole country. It feels like these ideas of fairness and justice are just always there, right? But here's the thing. Many of these bedrock ideas about how a society should work, how people should be treated under the law, they didn't just appear out of nowhere. They were carefully built, brick by legal brick, by the ancient Romans. Imagine a world without clear, agreed-upon rules. Chaos, constant arguments, maybe even unfairness everywhere you look. The Romans were brilliant at creating a system where, at least in theory, everyone knew where they stood. They gave us the very idea that a person is innocent until proven guilty. Not just some random saying, but a powerful shield designed to protect. They figured out how to write down laws so they applied to everyone, rich or poor, in a way that had never really been done before on such a huge scale. And that's why it matters to us, right now, today. Think about something simple, like a contract. Maybe you promise to do chores for an allowance, or you sign up for a new phone plan with your parents. That whole idea of a written agreement, a promise that can be enforced, that you can trust will hold up, that's deeply rooted in Roman law. It means we can trust that when we agree to something, there are rules to back it up, rules designed for a fairer outcome, rules that prevent someone from just changing their mind without consequences. It's like the invisible architecture of our modern lives. We walk through doors every day, and we don't always see the strong frame holding them up, but it's there, essential and unmoving. So, when you hear about justice in the news, or fairness in a game, remember that a piece of ancient Rome is still echoing through time. It's a quiet reminder that even across thousands of years, the human need for order, for justice, for a world that makes sense, remains truly the same. From ancient Rome to our class, laws that connect us. Have you ever felt that quiet sense of wonder, realizing how everything is connected, even across thousands of years? Laws might seem like dusty old textbooks, something only grown-ups worry about. But here's the thing, they are like invisible threads. They weave through time, connecting us to people who lived long, long ago. Imagine walking the busy streets of ancient Rome. People were trading, laughing, sometimes arguing, just like us. To keep their society from unraveling, they created rules. These weren't just for powerful leaders, they were for everyone. The bakers, the soldiers, the families, and the truly amazing part, many of those ancient ideas, forged in a city now, mostly ruins, still whisper in the way we live our lives today. Think about making a promise. If you agree to swap your cool drawing for a friend's favorite snack, that's a mini agreement, right? A small contract. In Rome, they had clear laws about keeping your word. They had rules for buying land, selling goods, for what happens if someone breaks a promise. These laws weren't just about practical stuff. They were about trust. They taught people how to interact fairly. It's a lot like our own bodies, you know. Our DNA carries instructions from our great-great-grandparents. Roman laws are like the social DNA of our civilization. They've been copied, adjusted, and passed down, quietly shaping how we think about fairness, ownership, and what justice means, even when we're just deciding who gets to go first in a game. So, when we look at Roman laws, we're not just flipping through history pages. We're holding up a mirror to ourselves. We're seeing the very foundations of how we choose to treat each other, how we build our towns, and how we hope for a fair world. It's a quiet, powerful reminder that even though centuries have passed, the human heart, its needs, its hopes, and its wish for order really haven't changed all that much. And that's why understanding these ancient voices matters so deeply to us, right here, right now.